Well, a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You are very much welcome along then to the final round of the GT World Challenge Europe Esports Championship, sponsored by Fanatec. And what a day we have in store for you. We go on all the time about sim racing being storytelling and story making of the highest quality. That is exactly what we have on offer with you today. It's David Christie in the virtual commentary booth. Joining me today, it's a very warm welcome to Jesse Lee. Jesse, fantastic to have you all the way from across the pond over in America, joining us for a very special occasion, this final round of the GT World Challenge Europe Esports Championship. And boy, oh boy, it couldn't be tighter at the top.
Yes, hello David, hello everyone, and it is an honor and a privilege to be here with you today to cover round 5, and like you said, it could not be better. Today we are going to decide a champion. There are about 3 cars that are in it, 2 that have a realistic shot. Qualifying was absolutely crazy as well. I cannot wait to get going. 3 hours are absolutely going to fly by here.
They absolutely are. Let's give you a little bit of context today, because it all boils down to today. The 4 rounds previously almost irrelevant, as we see the Ferrari Driver Academy esports team up there in the top position with 80 points after that horrendous round out at Nürburgring for the number 51 team. So it'll be them hoping to take the championship. Giovanni De Salvo and David Tinitza out in charge today. The 191 Racing Line Motorsports, Bentley Continental in second place, of Kevin Siclari in the second place there as well. They'll be trying to take charge there with 68 points. They have got the possibility of doing this. It's well within their reach, but again, it's all how down to the cookie crumbles today. The VRS Coanda Simsport team in third position in the number 18 Porsche. GPX Racing by Renfelten in fourth position. The second of the satellite teams, the VRS Coanda Simsport in the 88 car in fifth place. 30 points disappointingly for them. The well-loved Unicorns of Love in the 14 Mercedes AMG down in sixth position. Yassi in the 149 in the seventh position. BMW Sim Racing G2 Esports, the number 62 outfit, in 8th position, and it's the number 1 Williams Esports down in 9th position, with Team Rocket RGN down in 10th position. 17 points rounds out that position there. 11th place for the Giornalisti Esports Academy Ferrari 488. In 12th position is FFS Racing. 13th position, I was expecting personally more from this team myself, the 41 Simware Pro. It's then the Jota team in 14th position. Haupt Racing Team Schindler in 15th position. MCW Racing Team in 16th position. Another team that I was expecting to see higher up, DV1 Triton Racing, currently down in 17th position. It's been a disastrous season for them. BMW team BS Plus competition in 18th, and at the back of the field, Odox Motorsport in that number 121 Audi R8 LMS. And Jesse, seeing that team standings table is very, very deceptive, because when you look at the entry list that we've got here, we say it all the time, and it feels like a cliche to say it, but really this is the who's who of the pinnacle of esports in Assetto Corsa Competizione.
Yeah, you absolutely said it. It really is. All the big names are here. All the big teams are here. They're vying for European championships and dominance here. And today, 3 of them have an opportunity to be claimed as the GT World Challenge Esports Europe Endurance Series champion. And we're going to have the best seat in the house for this battle, and it's going to be a battle. You and I were talking pre-race about that, about how the 2 teams up at the top are certainly going to be going at it and likely locking horns here today, even though they're starting on different rows. But what an incredible show this is going to be. I've talked about the drivers. The drivers are certainly going to be nervous as well. A lot on the line.
So here is the entry list then for today's final race of the championship here at Barcelona, as we see Williams Esports in the number 1 car of Tarek Gamal and Darren McCormack in the Aston Martin Vantage. It's then the number 4 Haupt Racing Team Schindler, comprised of Lucas Mueller and Ben Hitz. Matthias Tiskovic and Jacob Charcot take place in the DV1 Triton Racing. Hopefully see a good performance from them in the Lamborghini, the number 10. In the 12 today is Oscar Benzes and Tunka Gunudles for Budasan Automotive Motorsport E-Team. Unicorns of Love need no introduction whatsoever in that famous number 14 machine. Bastian Richter and Lars Kisser in the Merc AMG GT3. GPX Racing by Renfeld, and that is of course Samir Ibrahim and Chris Hook in the Porsche in the 22. 23 is Team Rocket RGN, Jack McIntyre and Luca Berg. Kamil Pavlovsky and Danilo Santoro in the Generali Esports Academy in the number 27 Ferrari. The 33 is the Mercedes AMG GT3, Aka As by GTWR of Thibaut Prost and Marco Muri. And then in the 34 is Chris Hartfeld and Michel Nervi in the Predator Sim Racing by NBR. And then the 38 car, the Jota car, is the Robbie Stapleford outfit, along with Ross McGregor and the McLaren. And then it's one of the big boys, the FDA Esports team in the number 51. This is your current championship leader, Giovanni De Salvo, along with David Tinitza. Keep an eye on them. GTWR Academy's number 58 is piloted by Andrea Miato and Michelle Perella. Then it is one of the big bad BMWs, the BMW Sim G2 Esports, Artur Kammerer and Gregor Schill behind the wheel of the 62. Look for them to make some big moves through this afternoon as well. Team Fordzilla is Fabian Piffet and Sean Arnold behind the wheel of the 66 Lexus, with the MCW racing team of Gianfranco Gigli and Numa Natali in the number 80 Lamborghini as well. The number 89 BMW is the BMW Team BS competition of Angus Fender and Attila Denks out there as well as the 93 HPD Jazz Pro Europe of Josh Staffen and Zach Patterson, along with the sister team 94 car of Nicholas Hilbrand and Ben Kriener. 96 then is the FFS Racing of Killian Ryan Meenan, who has teamed up with Michael Kundatsioglu at the other end of there. And then after that you have got the 114 of Emil Frey, ZH Nord Racing, Serkan Duran and Patrick Webber in the Lexus. We've not really seen too much of them this season. 121 of Odox Motorsport of Gerard Martinez and Nicholas Albadeo Cummins will be looking to get a decent performance. They've only got 1 point on the championship so far. Raton Racing have 2 cars in next, the 129 and the 130. The number 1 is, or the number 1 team rather, filled in by David Pertil and Giuseppe Giratana, and then the sister number 2 car, Fulvio Barattini and Matthias Egger in the 130. The 157 is the St. Luc by R8G, the Roman Grosjean Academy car of Giorgio Simonini and Nicholas Hubin in the Audi, and then it's the 191. This is the other car you want to keep your eyes on this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, the Racing Line Motorsport of Kevin Cicalari and Marek Shintz, just 12 points behind your championship leader. The 192 Kessel Racing by Racing Line Machine is piloted by Matteo Blotto and Akos Gietvin, and then the 286 Team BUSR is got Leonard Demoink and Cameron Bridport in there. Carbon Simsport in the 720 round out the field with Mikhail Novakowski and Marcin Sviderik in the McLaren. And my goodness me, I need to go and lie down after that one, Jesse, because that is some field.
Very well done. Like you said, it is a who's who of ACC sim racing, and the stars are out on the track, not in the sky here, as we have all of the drivers here on camera today as usual, and they're making their final preparations, getting ready for today's race. I mentioned earlier there's likely going to be nervous drivers in the field today, and why not? It is championship weekend after all. Everybody making their final preparations. David, I have to ask, for final preparations, what did you always like to do?
Final preparations before the race is make sure that nothing is going to fail on the computer. I don't consider myself as a very competitive esports sim racer, but I like taking part, I like being part of it. But yeah, the nerves is such a big thing. That last 5 minutes, Jesse, before you get into the grids, as we're away to head down to the grid just now, is always so nerve-wracking, because that's it. You've done your prep work, you've done all of the strategy planning, you've done all of the pre-work in terms of getting the car set up. It's now down to the drivers.
Yeah, you couldn't be more right. The lead up to the green flag is highly anticipated. It doesn't matter what race it is, but today it is a very large occasion for Europe, and everyone here knows what they have to do. And well, you mentioned that there are several teams that don't have points, and what a way it would be to gain points in the final weekend round. Well, here is the starting sort of order. You got Merrick Shins that appears to be in the 191 now, and the 51 who they are chasing in the championship. I mentioned this, and I love to talk about a championship battle. Even though the race hasn't started, if it finished like this, Merrick Shins and the 191 Racing Line team, they'd be your champions. But as you mentioned to me, you don't think it's going to stay like this for long.
It almost never does. We'll see how it pans out, and I think you're only going to have to wait, Jesse, till the first corner to find out how that is going to pan out. But with 3.5 minutes left to go, let's take a running order then of how the cars qualified on the grid. And as Jesse pointed out, the 191 takes the scalp, takes pole position. Marek Shins on pole there with the Bentley alongside Robbie Stapleford, putting it in second position as well. So it's Mikhail Statsenko on row 2 alongside Giovanni Di Salvo in the 51, the Ferrari Driver Academy car there. It's then Lucas Mueller in 5th position with Chris Hartfeld in 6th. Bastian Richter for Unicorns of Love in 7th, with Arthur Kammerer in 8th position as well. Thibaut Prost in 9th. Chris Hook in the 22 Porsche in 10th position. You've then got David Pertil in the Lambo, the 129, and then just on your right hand side there, Matteo Blotto in the Ferrari you can see as well. Mikhail Nowakowski for Carbon Sim Sport Blue in the 720 on your left hand side, and then it's Danilo Santoro for the Gianlesi Esports Academy on your right hand side that you can see there in 14th place. That's row 7. Row 8 is going to be Giorgio Simonini in the 157, sent locked by R8G Racing Machine, and then Team Fordzilla on the right hand side there in the 66 is Fabian Pefet. Then you've got Matthias Tiskovic on row 9 in that number 10 Lamborghini for DV1 Triton Racing. Much better outfit or much better performance from them in qualifying. Beside is the 130 machine of Barazzini in the Lamborghini. That's Raton Racing by Clash number 2. Then it's the 58 of Andrea Miato. Now we saw Andrea getting into some issues last night in the GTWR Academy car, out as well again today with Pirella. And then on the right hand side there you've got Jack McIntyre in the Team Rocket RJN McLaren. That is row 10. Row 11, Dare McCormack in the Williams Esports Aston Martin on 21st position. 22nd position is going to be the 89 BMW Team BS Plus competition of Angus Fender, good friends of the commentary team here, and Killian Ryan Meenan in the 96 FFS Racing on that left hand side. Pretty bold, pretty simple livery that they've got on that car this season, with the 94 of Nicholas Hilbrand for HPD Jazz Pro Europe out there as well. Big shout out to Ben Kriener, also teamed up with him today. Then afterwards you have got, that is the 93, that's the sister car, that's Josh Staffen in the HPD Jazz Pro Europe machine, and we saw him, if you keep an eye on him, Jesse, when you see his camera you'll see the disco balls absolutely blazing away in the background. Cameron Bridport in the 26th position, 286 machine for Team BUSR. It's then the 121 of Martinez beside him as well, and just at the back of the grid we've got 3 cars left to go. That is going to be the number 12 machine of Benzes for Borison Automotive Motorsport E-Team. And then it's the 114 of Duran for Emil Frey ZH Nord Racing, and then right at the back of the grid that should be, let's have a look, we'll get an idea on that car in just a second, because it's a different car to the one I've got on the list here. But I mean, the number 80 is at the back of the grid. That's Gigli in the MCW Racing team. We're about to go on formation lap. That is a huge grid here, Jesse, that we've got going. And while the attention is going to be on 1st and 4th position for the championship, it's really anybody's to win today.
I couldn't have said it better myself. It is very much the case. Merrick Shins knows exactly what they need to do for the Racing Line Motorsport 191 Bentley, and so does the driver DeSalvo in the 51 Ferrari. It's going to be one of those days where you may make a move at some point in this race, and it might very much determine the outcome of this race, and you don't want to get it wrong. You might only have one or two shots to take a genuine stab at it. The first one, though, of course, is getting through this turn 1, 2, and 3 complex. We've barely even talked about where we are here today. Circuit de Barcelona. It's a track that you can get racy at, you can get side by side, and you can get stuck side by side on some of these turns as well. It's going to be one of those races where good decision making is at a premium, and oh Lord, the number 1 turn, how dangerous will that be for our championship contenders today?
Yeah, I think it's going to be absolutely pivotal given the run down to that turn 1. Barcelona is one of those circuits, you've got to say, Jesse, where it's a very high speed circuit and momentum maybe not so important on here, because it's all about keeping that speed up and keeping the acceleration as high as you possibly can. But draft, I think, is going to be one of the more important factors here in the afternoon during this 3-hour race.
Yeah, that's also very true. It is a very rhythm racetrack, and I think that's why some drivers prefer it and some don't. When you're in the zone, you can set really quick laps, but the second that somebody gets up in your mirror, the second somebody gets up next to you, it completely destroys your concentration and your rhythm. In Sector 2 alone, you get side by side for one corner, you're losing more than 1 second with these guys, and in some cases, you run out of room, as in the case of this particular corner. You're going to have to be mindful of these curbs. They're going to have to be mindful of going over the track limits as well. It's all these little things that make up your race, and you don't want this curb in particular to end your day, and I've seen that a few times, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've seen that many a time as well there, Jesse, so I think we're on the same page with this one. But you can see in the bottom right then, Marek Shits for the 191 Racing Line Motorsport team, currently doing everything that team needs to do to take this championship, to steal the championship from the FDA Esports team in that number 51. Remember, it was a horrific outing for that number 51 team last time out at Nürburgring. They really lost it all in the flash of an eye, and that brought the championship right back round. But the car's coming round then, the final chicane, and then it's going to be round New Holland Corner to get this race underway. 3 hours here at Barcelona, and it's David Christie along with Jesse Lee taking you through every single step of the action here. You're not going to miss a beat. As always, hit that like and subscribe button on the YouTube channel, and you'll keep up to date with all the news. But here we go. I'm excited for this one. 3 hours of Barcelona, the final race of the season gets underway. You could not ask for more at stake. Marek Shins takes the cars round 2 by 2 by 2. We've got a green flag. We are going racing. It's a dive then down to Elf Corner for the first time of Askin. Marek Shins gets a great start there. You see DeSalvo. Oh, he got huge contact. It's going to be the 149 of Mikhail Stasenko. Goes rolling back into the grid as well. We've got absolute chaos and carnage, and we've not even hit turn 1.
It's bedlam at Barcelona. More than about 5 or 10 cars have gone off there. One car wrecked into the barrier. It looked like a McLaren to me, and came back onto the racetrack and collected a few others. It's kind of similar to what we've seen from some of the other races as well, and an absolutely frightening start. Halloween has come early for some of these drivers, David.
Wow, that is, that was absolutely horrendous. I'll tell you right now, I've got horrible feelings that Senko is going to get a penalty, because it did not look like he held on the brakes. That car just rolled backwards onto the track and took another 5 to 10 cars out with him on that one. And, race control really do clamp down quite quickly. But huge drama there. But that now means that the Giovanni DeSalvo, your other championship contender, moves up into 3rd place now, behind Robbie Stapleford. And this is now a different complexion, because at the moment I think DeSalvo's doing everything that the 51 needs to do, but we've still got a huge race ahead of us, and we still have to complete the opening lap here, Jesse.
DeSalvo is sitting there going, well, that was easy. I'm in the exact position I need to win this championship. Were it so easy? Still, 2 hours, 58 minutes to go, son. You got to get up on that wheel and get it done. And lucky there for the 51 that they were not collected in that. And, of course, the nightmare that was the fourth round of this championship for the 51. The first round for them that they hadn't scored any points. And now they are in a sort of race for your life mode here. And it certainly has worked out for them so far. Third place, as we ride on board with Robbie Stapleford here. This is the view from his vehicle looking at the 191. It's always been a question, hasn't it, David? How do you race people that are racing for a championship when maybe you aren't quite doing the same? I suspect you have to go out there and you have to race them just as hard as anybody else. What do you reckon?
I think that's absolutely spot on, Jesse. It actually annoys me sometimes when you see these webcams, because inevitably these lads are they're nearly always younger. They're insanely more talented than I ever could dream of being, and the amount of effort that they put in and professionalism is just absurd. I mean, obviously we've got quite a number of drivers can't make it today. They're maybe in team, they're in team obligations elsewhere. But the thing is that the amount of work these drivers all have to do, we've spoken about it on many different streams, Jesse. It's crazy that they don't just turn up and race anymore. It's almost a life for them now.
Yeah, who would have ever thought about 15 years ago that this could be a career path and could be an integral part of your life and career in some cases, but here it is. And I'm of the same opinion. The professionalism of a lot of these drivers, as young as some of them are, is absolutely exemplary. The future of esports and racing is absolutely bright, and the stars, of course, you can make a name for yourself right here today. And we ride on board with Richter here, trying to get the 9th place position, not quite close enough on this occasion. You mentioned that draft being ultimately important down the straightaway. It certainly is. We didn't really talk about the other thing. What car you're in could also change the benefit of the draft as well.
It can, but not to the extent that it used to be. So when Assetto Corsa came out as a platform, everybody had their own favourite cars. But what we've seen here from the SRO balance of performance fix that they've put in, their custom BOP, has almost neutralised the entire field. So there isn't the case now where a particular car will do insanely better. You will obviously get cars that are suited to a different type of track, but not in the same way that we've usually seen. And we can see that in the fact that we've got in the top 10 is probably about 5-6 different constructors in that. So again, it's just a case of getting a car that you're comfortable with and can do that. Meanwhile, at P15, I'm hearing Jack McIntyre has had an incident at turn 9. He's got going again, but that's lost him a huge amount of places, and that is down to 25th position. So that is a horrendous start from that McLaren. A little jig from left to right for the car there. I wonder if he's nursing damage on that one. And at an early stage of the race here, Jesse, having any sort of damage on your car, it's a blessing and a curse, isn't it? You want to get any bad luck out of the way now, so that potentially you can just jump in the pits and just re-alter things and try and make a charge.
Yeah, McIntyre there shaking the car out, just trying to feel what they have. Of course, force feedback is excellent, and you can kind of get an idea of what you have. And whatever the fall, that car dropped him about 10 places and having to reassess. And to your point, it's a long old way till the first pit stop, so you don't want to take yourself out of the pit cycle and have to do an extra pit stop. So they're certainly going to hope that there's nothing broken in whatever corner they hit that car, or maybe they didn't hit anything at all. I didn't see any scratches on that car. Maybe they just took a turn a little bit wrong, ended up on the beach. Also a possibility as well. But either way, certainly you have one of those moments. It wakes you up and you have to reassess what you are doing on the racetrack.
Yeah, and that's the key thing as well, is that you have to kind of have that big picture mentality all the time. when you're doing these races. A cracking start there for the Honda there of Josh Staffen in the 93, doing a great job. I mean, he did just get taken there from Cillian Raiminen in the number 96 Aston Martin, but did a cracking job. That Honda is, like you said earlier on, it's not one of those cars that we normally see up at the top end, but doing a brilliant job to hold on to that position, although he has got Gigli and Mateusz Tiskovic in the DV1 Triton Racing number 10 outfit just behind him. But as we stand with 3 laps in the books, just about to be 4 laps, it's going to be Marek Schintz who comes across the line in the lead by 7/10, make that 9/10 of a second from the number 38 of Robbie Stapleford for Jota Team Racing. And then Giovanni De Salvo in 3rd position, Chris Hartfeld in 4th, Artur Kammerer in 5th. You've then got Lucas Muller in 6th place, Samir Ibrahim in 7th. It's then Giorgio Simonini in 8th position, Marco Muri in 9th, and Bastian Richter for Unicorns of Love rounding out the top 10. And I can hear the rumblings. Everyone wants to see a replay of the start of this race. And I've got to be honest, Jesse, I think it's going to have to go through some censoring, because there was a lot of carnage in that opening straight. You can't even call it turn 1, because it all kicked off before we got to turn 1.
Yeah, the stewards aren't going to like that, David. They're not going to like that one bit. You pointed out the not holding the brakes, that being a big issue. But what also started that also is a really large issue as well. We were riding along with the 80 Lamborghini there, and I was just questioning. You ran down through the grid. Weren't they dead last on the start of the grid? And they've made up 11 places. That's brilliant progress.
I'm just having a look here, actually. The number 80, I think you're right, actually. I think they were down towards the back for sure. So they were last, confirmation in my ear there, and they've made up, what's that, about 15 places. That's an outrageous start to the race. A great spot there, Jesse. And is this the start of the race? Right. Get your popcorn, get your coffee, ladies and gentlemen. This is on board then with De Salvo then, and oh dear. Now see, I don't know, because he didn't move. He didn't like turn to the right from that angle anyway. It looked like that Yasik car came over in front. That's a really strange incident there, Jesse.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to pass judgment on that. It's not my job to either, I suppose. But it certainly looked like there was a little fender rubbing prior to the spin to begin with as well. It looked like the cars juddered into each other. So that's a very close one. I'm very curious what the stewards will say about that, as, like you said, it was definitely close. We're going to look at a slow-mo of this and just confirm. You can see the red car there kind of going to the middle of the track. The Yas Heat car is not moving. That was the initial contact I was talking about. And then there's that. Then there's another one. There were 2 touches. And then what you're going to see here is, oh dear, try to fit it in a space that didn't exist, David.
I don't know. It's confusing, because obviously you've got the pit line that kind of puts your eyes off a little bit, but if it wasn't for those initial 2 touches, Jesse, I would be inclined to think that was maybe on the part of the Yasik car. But with that initial aggression, my mind goes more towards De Salvo. I have to be placing the onus of responsibility on that. At which point, when do you let that position go? He wasn't going to get past him moving over to that point there. A lot of question marks raised on that. I think we're going to have to see it from a couple of different angles to get conclusive sort of decision one way or the other. And at the end of the day, we're not the stewards. We're just here to, he's as straight as he can. What more can you do? You're crowded out. You've got a car in front of you. Yeah, see that wheel jinxed to the left a little bit just before, but I wonder if that's just as the contact is made. And yeah, all hell breaks loose after it. So look, the stewards are going to have a very difficult time, and that is not what you want to see. As we see Chris Hartfeld getting a 15-second penalty. But the other point being, Jesse, why would you bring yourself into that danger of getting yourself into trouble? You're online for a championship win, potentially, if you get a good position, but I don't understand why you would put yourself at that risk. Contact made there with the pass in turns 1 and 2, but there you have it. The
race control. An incident between cars 4 and 34 on lap 1, a 15-second time penalty for car 34 for avoidable contact. So that was the penalty David mentioned. And to answer your question, I don't know. I don't really have an answer for you, to be completely honest with you. It looked so strange. It looked like the 51 was just trying to get over. I don't think they were trying to contest that position. I think they were trying to get in line and just misjudged it. You don't normally see that, but there is that giant display right in their view. Maybe they thought they were clear. That's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, it's and again, obviously, we'll come off of this topic, but it could potentially have championship implications there for that FDA Academy team. Looking at that onboard again from the Ferrari, I just had the hunch that it did show his steering wheel moving slightly, not moving, but was poised and positioned slightly to the right there. So, look, outside of that, I mean, that's a stupid accident to happen at this level. The drivers need to be way more aware. And let's not forget as well, Jesse, is that these drivers have got a radar. You know, DeSalvo would have known that he was dangerously close to the car at his front right corner, and then the car just comes straight back on and takes out and out. Yeah, I think that Yas car is going to get a penalty for afterwards. Obviously, we're hearing that he might have been on the brakes, but we'll get back to that later, as this is Akos Kietvin under all sorts of pressure. You've got a Honda trying to dive up the inside. That's never going to work. And you saw that coming a mile off. Akos Kietvin gets absolutely punted into the nether realm from Josh Staffen, who tried to get it going, and we've got 3 cars off at turn 1.
How many times do you see it going into turn 1 here at Barcelona, where you think you can brake in time and get the car rotated into one, and you can, and maybe you hit the curb a little too hard. Maybe you come off the curb and you catch the car that's trying to just sort of hang on the outside. And like you said, you can see stuff like that a mile away. And a unfortunate incident there with the 192 sets them back many positions. So progress reset for the 192. And they will be fuming a little bit because of that as well. We expected a great race. We expected some drama, and we expected a championship battle, and I think we are still going to be treated to that. But my final word on the 51 is this. If you have a championship lead, if you're in a position to win it, you can't afford at this level to make silly mistakes, and you can't afford in a championship hunt to make mistakes like that. You just can't afford to do it. A mental error perhaps, but it might be a very costly one indeed.
Yeah, it really could be. Back on board then with Arthur Kammerer for BMW Sim Racing G2 Esports. The BMW doing very well this afternoon. 15 minutes into the race, and he's hunting down Chris Hartfeld in that 34 Predator Sim Racing by R8G. Just in front of him, the Porsche, and then you've got the 51 FDA Esports team of Giovanni DeSalvo just up in front of him as well. So again, cracking job through the first part of the race. We'll ignore that first, you know, the first the instant, the going down in turn 1. You're always going to get that. For the most part, what I don't want is it overshadowing what an incredible race we've had in this first 15 minutes. And for the most part, all of the drivers shuffling into their natural positions anyway, through pace and through what they're going on. Oh, I've absolute bombshell here from production team here, Jesse. That is that lap 1 incident from the 51 is being put down as a racing incident.
Wow, now that is very interesting. That is going to be music to the 51's ears, isn't it? Racing incident, and well, that I wonder what Yas Heat thinks about that, but it doesn't really matter because the 51 exonerated on that account. So it is race on, not only race on, but championship on for the 51. Excellent pass right there by Angus Fender.
Yeah, Angus Fender doing very well in that 89 BMW, doing a cracking job for BMW Team PS Plus competition. Currently halfway through the field just now. He's hunting down that 130 in front of him. And that is, of course, the Lamborghini there of Raton Racing by Clash, the second car of that. We see, and that is DeSalvo going wide at turn 1. What has happened there? Because now he's down behind let's have a look there. So that is the Porsche of Chris Hartfeld hunting him down. You've got Arthur Kammerer here, and this is starting to get a little bit fighty. This is not what you want for the 51 to happen.
Now, it's not what the 51 wants, but something must have happened in the turn 1-2 complex, the S's, so to speak, and it's got them into this position as they are all over them now. Hartfeld and Kramer now are directly behind them, and it almost looked like for a split moment Hartfeld was going to get around him, but to no avail. But the three of them now stacked up. Very dicey here.
Yeah, absolutely. And predictably, chat is absolutely detonated and triggered by that decision by the stewards. But all I'll say is here in the virtual commentary booth, we can still hear the long drawn-out sigh from race control at the actions going on here. But this is now a race we've got, and I can't believe if we've got 2 3/4 hours of this, Jesse, we're going to need life support at the end of this. Confirmation then on text of the incident on lap 1 between cars 420 and the 51. That is a racing incident, so that is a huge development there. Right, let's keep going then with this one, because at the moment then it looks like Giovanni De Salvo has undone the damage that he did for himself there at turn 1. Now I wonder, did he just miss the brakes there, because it looks like that he got going again, as we say. Kammerer looking very aggressive up the inside there of Hartfeld, thinks better of it, and De Salvo actually has to come onto the brakes so early into turn 1 there.
Yeah, that's a big old defensive move from Hartfeld there. Kramer was trying to get away with it and had no space, got ran all the way to the right side of the track there. An excellent defense by Hartfeld. It's the most frustrating feeling in sim racing, being behind a car that has a 50-second penalty. You know, post pit stop, they're going to be behind you anyway, but they're still going to race you as hard as they can. And the 62, Kramer knows that and has to get around him in earnest if he wants it. He is going to have to earn it. Meanwhile, the 51 now has a little bit of breathing room all of a sudden after these two started racing each other.
That's what I can't understand though, Jesse, is because he did have the breathing room early on, and then he did that horrendous lap that brought him all the way back to third place as well. So I mean, it was they're doing 145s at the moment, and the leaders are doing 143s. So again, it just shows the pace is falling off with this group here. But I'm really not sure what actually happened. We'll maybe get a replay of that very shortly. But Kammerer and Hartfeld, they would be well advised to keep their heads down and get pushing through this as we jump back to Andrea Miato for the GTWR RH8 Academy car, currently chasing down the 129 Lamborghini just in front. That is, of course, the Raton Racing by Clash number 1 car just out in front. But looking at this, Miato definitely seems to have the pace in that Aston Martin.
Sure does. Closing up right here on the straightaway, the Aston, the V8, getting it done down the straightaway as you might expect. Of course, the Lamborghini no slouch itself takes a look down the inside, can't quite make it happen, doesn't make the lunge, and follows suit through the S's here. I just want to, for just one moment, I want to talk about Stapleford in the 38 for Jota McLaren. It's fantastic what they were able to do in qualifying, and they've certainly backed it up here in the race as well. Of course, Merrick Shins leads the race. He's more than 2 seconds up in front. But that 38, I did not know what to expect from them. They've only got 4 points on the season, but they have done such a great job in the early stanza of this race. And my hat's off to them. What an excellent drive, not only in qualifying, but now in the race.
And that's where consistency really shines through here, Jesse, is the fact that obviously qualifying is I don't want to say irrelevant, because it is massively relevant, but and there is Barrettini, and that was I think that was Angus Fender that he was trying to defend that position from. So Barrettini gets going again. Fender is off into the distance there, although a little bit of understeer off into the grass there, and I'm being told actually it was 2 Lamborghinis that came together there, so that might have been Matthias Tiskovic for DV1 Triton Racing. The fact that he's pulled that car over to the right hand side there, I think he's got big problems in that car, and he's just trying to nurse it home, Jesse, back to pit lane. Huge drama already in the first 20 minutes of this race.
Yeah, it is only the first 20 minutes of the race. You can see the 10 here is completely crunched. That DV1 Lamborghini is had a major frontal impact there. Certainly has some broken components there that they will have to fix. And mentioned earlier about going off here, having an incident early, it completely destroys your pit strategy. He's not coming in. He's not coming in the 10. I wouldn't have predicted that.
I wonder if that's a hardware issue then. Maybe it's resolved itself. It certainly seems back up to speed in the same way. Back to this battle for third position then. And this is now a 4-car battle for third position. Just off the back is Samir Ibrahim. We know that he is a very, very fast driver indeed down in 7th position. And realistically, I mean, these names here, this group of 5 cars here, the talent that they've got between them is absolutely ridiculous. Like any one of these drivers could win the race right now. I think had it not been for that start and they hadn't been in a better position, then they might have been able to challenge the 191 Racing Line Motorsport of Marek Schinz. But as it stands just now, they're kind of tripping over themselves. And with 2.5 hours, something has to give, something has to change for them to be in a different position than where they are right now.
Precarious position the 51 is in because they can't drop a position, otherwise they would lose the championship by 1 point as they run. And I do like to do the maths, and I'm constantly updating it in my head and on my little notepad here. And of course, right now, of course, the 51 as they run would be the champion, but an ever so long way to go. Hartfeld not giving up, Kramer, Muller, and of course, Ibrahimi. Big names, like you said, just absolutely fantastic, world-class drivers indeed. And they are all going head-to-head one final time in this European Endurance Championship, and what a treat it is for us. Meanwhile, contention for the 9th place spot continues as Richter closes in on Muir in the 33. Gets really close, but doesn't have an open lane. Defensive driving, you don't really talk about it a whole lot in sim racing, but I think the better you get at sim racing, the more defensive driving techniques that you learn, and the better you get at them. So defensive as possible for the 33 here as the 2 AMGs going toe-to-toe.
Yeah, and it's such a scary sight to see that in your rear view mirrors, and I'm sure that a heck of a nice guy. We'll come back to the Mercedes battle in just a second then. This is up the inside the 130, and that's the contact with the 2 Lamborghinis. And well, I think race control, Jesse, are going to have more difficult things to look at today, I think.
Well, I think I wouldn't need to be a steward to be able to tell you 2 into 1 doesn't go, David.
Yeah, exactly. Back to this battle with the Mercedes, and it's a scary sight seeing Bastian Richter in your rear view mirror. And I'm sure Bastian Richter is a lovely guy in real life, but seeing that Unicorns Love number 14 Mercedes behind you is not what you want to have on a Saturday afternoon with 2.5 hours left to go. There feels like an air of inevitability around it, but full marks to Marco Muri for GTWR by Ake Asp team. Doing a cracking job of holding them off, and really, while Bastian Richter is looking very, very pacey, doesn't seem to have the answer to get past that car right now. Well,
there you have it from race control incident between cars 720 and the 23 on lap 4. No further action. Back to the conversation. I've always wondered where the Unicorns Is Love team name came from. It's so very unique to them, and I've been trying to figure that out for the better part of the last couple of days personally. Where on earth did they get that? Well, they're certainly trying to get the 9th place spot still at this point, just kind of pacing out the 33, seeing where you're better, maybe probing for weakness here, doing all the typical racing driver things, are certainly talking to the team as well, giving them telemetry, saying, hey, you're beating him into this sector, you're beating him into this turn, he's getting a better exit off of this turn. Just the typical things, feeling out process here in the early goings for a top 10 spot.
And the thing on that as well is that it's such a team race, and I'll carry that conversation on in a second actually. Incident between cars 66 and number 1 on lap 2. That is a racing incident. So the 66 is Team Fordzilla and the number 1 is Williams Esports. Incident between cars 720 and 1 on lap 3. 10-second time penalty to the number 1 car. That's Darren McCormack in the Williams Esports machine, and that is on Carbon SimSport Blue. I believe that's Mikhail Novikowski that's behind the wheel of that one. So the 720, that is in the succession of 2 laps. That's 2 different penalty messages that we've seen. And then I've got another one here, incident between cars 58 and 129. That is the 58 is a GTWR Academy car, and Andrea Miato, and the 129 is David Pertil of Raton Racing Clash number 1. No further action on that one. So I just wondered what happened there. I missed something while... Oh, and Hartveld's gone down to 6th position. So, huge drama there, Jesse, as Chris Hartveld, who was in the way of Arthur Kammerer and Lucas Mueller, all the way down into to 6th position there.
Yeah, I saw that in turn 1. Kramer went in there and had contact with the 34 Porsche, forced them a little bit wide, and by a little bit I mean completely off the racing track. Had to go over the slowdown rumble strips and back onto the track. Lost a position, actually lost several positions in that exchange. Stewards will look at that, of course, as Bastian Richter here continuing to probe for weakness, trying to find a way around the 33. I think he's playing this very smart right now, David. If he wasn't, I think he would have already attempted a couple of moves. He's not showing the 33 his hand yet.
No, not just yet, but we'll come back to that in a second. This is a run down to turn 1. You can see Arthur Kammerer trying to leave it as late as possible, goes into turn 1 and pulls it in. Doesn't quite get it. See, again, on my personal opinion, is that he's left plenty of room, and that Porsche has tried to turn in to a space that was already occupied. That BMW, we joke about it being a massive car. Where is it going to go? Where is Chris Hartveld trying to turn into on a space that doesn't exist anymore?
Yeah, I say this all the time in my broadcast. I am a broadcaster, and the stewards are always right, and I back up their decisions, and that's how I get on with all of the stewards. And I mean, certainly it's going to be up to them to determine that. I don't disagree with you, David. To be fair, I think if you leave the room and they come over, I think that's your fault, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, and that's it. And unfortunately, I've got a big mouth, so I just tend to have an opinion, say it, and then get proved wrong 90% of the time.
Why are we here, right?
Yeah, exactly. What could be worse than saying it on stream in front of hundreds and hundreds of people watching? What is going on with Nicholas Hilbrand in this 94 Honda? It is on the verge of getting into the top 10. This is fabulous stuff. I've got to be honest. I really do have a little part of me that just loves the Honda as their 13th and 14th, and doing a cracking job.
Yes, indeed. The Honda continuing to gain time, gain positions, and now threatening the top 12 here. The 58 doesn't look very sound. It's a bit wayward for my liking, skidding around just a bit. Certainly wouldn't think you've run the tires off of it in 30 minutes, maybe pushing a little extra hard, seeing that Honda right behind him perhaps.
I've got to be honest, I got a little bit carried away there. The 93 Honda is actually a lap down, so they're not side by side on the track. I know the dream is still semi-alive because you've got Nicholas Hilbrand up there in 13th position, but the 93 of Josh Staffen, he's probably taking a pit stop to recharge his disco lights. No word of a lie, like I say, when you have a look, if you can go on board and get his webcam up, there is strobes, there's party lights, everything, every single time.
You're not kidding.
No, it's always great to see here. So this is going to be a replay then of down into turn 1, and I get a feeling that is Bastian Richter at the inside there. No, it's not, sorry, excuse me. That is up the inside earlier on, so that is going to be Kammerer. Yeah, exactly. You've left the door open. You can't then kind of undo that.
Well, we await what the stewards think about that as this battle does continue. There is still a Honda battling for 12th place. It is Hildebrand and also Ryan Meenan in the 96. Killian trying to get that spot as well. As well, one of the great things about sim racing, one of the great things about racing in general, mind you, is sometimes if you're close enough, you can take someone else's opportunity and turn it into one of your own. And oh my, well, here is the 93, and you were not kidding. You didn't oversell that at all, David. Look at that.
I know, and he's wearing sunglasses as well. It's like, what an absolute baller he is. He is just living his best life right there. But yeah, great work from Josh Staffen. Try to do a recovery drive here on the HPD Jazz Pro America 93 car, down in 26th place at the moment, already at least 2 laps down, because he's got Barattini just in front of him in the 130. I say just in front, but it's actually about 12 seconds. But let's give you a quick recap then, ladies and gentlemen, with half an hour of this final round of the GT World Challenge Europe Esports here at Barcelona. It is still Marek Schintz in the lead in the 191 from Robbie Stapleford in the 38 machine, and then in third place, crucially for the championship, Giovanni De Salvo is in third position in that 51 FDA outfit as well. So as it stands, the FDA outfit would take the championship there just now. Artur Kammerer under real pressure from Lucas Muller as well in 4th and 5th position, the 42 fighting it out there as well. Then in 6th place you've got Chris Hartfeld after that earlier contact with Artur Kammerer. Samir Ibrahim in 7th position, Giorgio Simonini in 8th position for the 157. Marco Muri, as you can currently see here, fighting it out with Bastian Richter, and still this is what I said earlier. It's one thing to be fast and to be able to charge down, but Marco Muir doing a brilliant job of just placing that Merc exactly where it needs to be, Jesse.
He sure is. The 33 not showing any weakness. I said that the 14 of Richter was probing for weakness. His team's certainly trying to help him, but the 33 just doesn't have any weakness. They're on the apex. They're not slow enough out of any corner to get side by side or anywhere near that. So this is just sort of their life now, the 33 and the 14, and eventually there will be a pit stop, maybe something then, but for the past 15 minutes, these two have been in this exact configuration at this exact interval apart from one another. Excellent racing by the two of them, and they will continue that fight as it continues to be a fight for 9th place. And is Muir catching Simonini in the 157 Audi in front just a little bit, perhaps?
The answer to that is yes. Marco Muir, that last lap round, did a 1:45.207, and Giorgio Simonini did a 1:45.285. So very slightly, very marginally, but yes, that gap is starting to come down very slightly indeed. However, you've got to also argue that perhaps the smart money on Marco Muir and Bastian Richter is to work together. Just keep pushing rounds, keep the lap times low, and try and get some of that time back. Now, Bastian Richter, I think, will possibly be enjoying a little bit of fuel saving going on here as well, under the wing of Marco Muir. But when he feels it's time, he will dive out to the side and decide to push things on here.
Well, there is Samir Ibrahim, who finds themselves in the 7th place position, still behind Hartveld. You saw him in the cam looking around there, looking at his surroundings, seeing who's around him, seeing what space he has, and of course, focusing on the battle in front. There's nothing out of that rear view camera that'll interest you, Samir. I promise you that. It's all in front of you. And of course, the 34 with that 15-second penalty, they'll serve that on the first pit stop of the race that we expect. Pit stops, where do you think? Start about in the next 20-ish, 25 minutes, I'd say.
Yeah, I think what you're going to find is just after the hour mark, that's when your first pit stops are going to come in. They'll obviously try and stretch it as long as they possibly can. They've got to keep in mind the driver's stint times that they have got to do, as well as enforced by the game itself. So they'll be keeping an eye on that. But yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. Think about the hour mark as a good time to start having a look. Now, you could always short stint it. You could always try and push early and get out and try and get a little bit of track position. If you're maybe held up by a car in front of you, that might be an idea to do. But again, it's all strategy. It's all this 3000 IQ smooth brain thinking that goes on behind the scenes. And this is almost certainly going to have been organised, Jesse, well in advance. So, you're going to have somebody on the comms with teams going, you've got 24 minutes left to go. If this situation happens, then we're going to go and do scenario B or something like that. And it sounds ridiculous because the overwhelming perception from back in the day is that these drivers turn up, they're very, very fast, and they just get on with it. But now there is such a wide level of support behind the scenes in terms of, strategy, in terms of performance, in terms of consistency training, and even down to things like physical fitness and nutrition as well. These drivers all have a very, very strict regime that they've got to keep to. An incident between cars 58 and 94 on lap 16. It's a warning to car 94. That's Nicholas Hilbrand in HPD Jazz Pro Europe. And then incident between cars 96 and 93 on lap 18. That's Killian Ryan Mainen and Josh Staffen. No further action. So now we've caught up with all of the incidents that have happened. Again, this tends to happen quite a lot, Jesse. These endurance races, you get a crazy first 15 minutes, and then you get a quiet period for about half an hour, and then another 15 minutes where just all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, it certainly seems to be the case. There's a cadence. We call it the accordion effect here, and the field will spread out, and then it will come back together, and you have those pockets of very intense, fierce racing. And we say things like that, but there's drivers like Killian Ryan Mainen who hasn't had any real open space to themselves. They've always had a car filling up their windscreen and filling up the rearview camera as well. So we say things like that, but sometimes it doesn't always work out. I was watching the 51 Ferrari in their times. DeSalvo is catching the second place car. It was 5 seconds at one point. It was down to 3, and now it's down to 2.2 or somewhere there about now for DeSalvo. So they are catching the second place car, and that does nothing but help the 51 in their championship hopes. Meanwhile, Racing Line, David, it's frustrating. You're doing everything you can. You sat on the pole. You got a clean start. You have a fairly massive lead, and it right now it's just not enough.
And that's absolutely spot on there, Jesse. The problem is that they've put themselves in this position through the performances earlier on in the season. Just hearing from Race Control and the production team that Bastian Richter in the Unicorns Love has finally made the move, got past Marco Muir, and there we go, confirmation. That is now 9th position for Bastian Richter, and just up the road there, that is not Giorgio Simonini, because that is a Lamborghini, not an Audi, so that'll be one of the cars getting put a lap down. But back to your point about the gaps coming down, it absolutely is. You couldn't be more right on that, because that gap now down to what's that, 1.3 seconds? That is absurd pace. So I wonder if the McLaren is just dropping off towards this part of the stint, and if it's doing it now, does this mean that McLaren is constantly going to do this? And this is huge for the championship, because if DeSalvo gets that second place, then there's literally nothing more that Marek Schintz can do. And with the frustration point of it, the problem with that is they knew exactly what they had to do coming into this round, but they also knew what DeSalvo and the FDA team had to do, and it was considerably less than the 191 Racing Line Motorsport team. So Lady Luck is going to have to shine on one of these teams today, and we're going to have 2 hours and 20 minutes, Jesse, to find out on which team it's going to shine.
That's part of that old would you rather, David. Would you rather be the one chasing or the chaser? So I think a lot of times you think you'd want to be the one that's chasing, but not so much. Sometimes it's good to have the lead and have to do the least amount to get it done. Mind you, we say things like that, but they still had to finish inside the top 3 to guarantee a championship today. That's no small feat in the European Endurance Championship.
It absolutely isn't. And you were saying, would I prefer to be chasing or being chased? And I've got to be honest, I prefer chasing. I prefer using the car in front and their most likely superior driving skill to guide me around the track. If I've got a car behind me, I just fold like a cheap suit, and under the pressure, and I usually find myself off into the nearest gravel trap. And that's no word of a lie. I really don't like the idea of a car being behind me, because suddenly you're aware of it, it, and then suddenly you start checking it. So yeah, I'd rather be chasing the car down in front. But Darren McCormack doing a bit of a recovery drive here, struggling with the Aston Martin of Williams Esports there in the number 1 machine, getting that 10-second penalty for an earlier infringement there, and that is going to go onto the pit stops. We're about 20 minutes away, I think, from seeing all of the cars coming in to hand over to their drivers. And here's an interesting line of thought as well, is that do you think that they're going to have, because obviously they're going to be aware who their faster driver is, and I use that in air quotes because it's a very relative term, but do you think they'll be leaving their faster driver to do stints 1 and 3, or to get them in for a quick burst in the middle?
Well, I think if your driver that you have in now is comfortable and is running times that you need them to be running, a la Merrick Shins in the 191, you might leave them in regardless if they're the faster of the two, the perceived faster of the two drivers. But I think a lot of the other teams are different. If you're embroiled in a battle right now, yeah, you're likely to get your fast driver in there for the middle stint, get those positions back. And everybody here is fairly comparable on pace. We had 25 cars today all qualify in on less than 1 second of each other. We had the top 4 cars qualify in a tenth and a half. So you kind of get the picture. Like you said, pace is comparable. But if you're in a battle right now, you are certainly prepping, if you don't already have your faster driver, you're prepping your faster driver to get in to make up these positions. Bird in the hand's worth 2 in the bush, right? So you got to take those opportunities. You got to execute on those opportunities. But hey, if you're sort of on your own and you have nothing to lose, then sure. Just keep the driver you have in there. Keep the hot hand in. And speaking of keeping the hot hand in, DeSalvo making the pass for second place. Stapleford getting past here, but trying to fight back on the inside. The inside's going to become the outside here, and it looks like the 51 Ferrari is going to get it done. Jonas protest, but it will not last. New second place, the 51 Ferrari. DeSalvo getting that pass done. Robbie Stapleford, though, still trying to claw anything back in and not giving up on this fight.
Yeah, and I think it was, from what I'm hearing, it was Stapleford that made a small mistake that allowed the pass to happen very, very easily. Although, in all honesty, DeSalvo, the pace that he had, was absolutely on it and was just making it a matter of time. But look at the fact that that has now brought Arthur Kammerer back into the fight with these two here as well, given that we're going to come into pit stops, and it is not beyond the realms of possibility that teams and drivers can lose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds, if not more, in a pit stop to other teams. So strategy is going to be a huge thing that is going to determine the layout of this race very, very shortly indeed. But we're back looking at Andrea Miato, even, excuse me, for the GTWR RHG Academy in the number 58 car. He's going to be coming in very shortly to hand over to Perea in that machine. This is a replay then of Robbie Stapleford and that aforementioned incident. I think this is just going to be late on the brakes, too late on the brakes in turn 1. Can't get the car turned in, and it takes too much of the curve. The car jumps over, and yeah, look, that's going to do it every day of the week. To be honest, he's very, very lucky that he held on.
I was just thinking that myself. I've taken that curb several times, and it always ends with me backwards into a barrier. I think that has something to do with the skill level we're dealing with here, and to catch that car, that is not easy. Those baguette curbs on the inside, the anti-cut curbs, if you will, and they can play havoc with you and completely throw you off the track. The fact that he entered 3 side by side with the 51, no small feat for the driver of the 38 McLaren, certainly, but little mistakes like that, maybe a little bit of mirror driving, David, seeing the car getting bigger in your mirror there, can sometimes throw you off your game a little bit.
It really can, and obviously all of these drivers have access to an onboard display, and part of that onboard display is the relative timings. And quite honestly, if you see that gap from yourself to Giovanni DeSalvo in third place, or as he was there, coming down at the speed that it was, you start getting a little bit nervous because you think, how and what am I doing wrong here? How is he able to get so much speed over me on that one? But to be honest, Robbie Stapleford, incredibly talented, incredibly fast driver. This won't be the last you'll have seen him in the podium playing positions just now, settling in, just behind that Ferrari. And again, I wonder if it's a case of the performance from the McLaren just starting to sag a little bit during the middle of the stint here, whereas towards the end, the BMW seems to just keep that consistency really, really well and keep pushing through. And again, you have to think that Giovanni De Salvo was about 5 seconds behind Robbie Stapleford, and now De Salvo, Stapleford and Camera are split by about 1.5 seconds. As we go back to Party Boy himself, Josh Staffen for the HPD Jazz Pro America 93 Honda just now, trying to hunt down, I think that's Danilo Santoro in the 27 Jamley Esports Academy machine that's just in front of him. But Josh Staffen, Jesse, has really trying to secure a recovery drive here. There's not much more that he can after that early incident and getting into trouble. When you're that far down outside the top 20 and with the quality of drivers, it's very, very difficult to make your way back up.
It's hard to focus whenever you have something like that, and perhaps it's out of your control some of the time, and you get back in the pack and maybe you're not racing anybody. It's hard to concentrate, but whenever you have somebody to race against, it makes it that much easier. You almost forget what place you're in. It doesn't matter. It's the fact that you have the opportunity to overtake somebody in front of you that's important, so you have that to focus on. Speaking of being focused, Arthur Kramer, like you said, had been brought back into the battle for what is effectively third place here. Could be more, and certainly focused in is the G2 Esports driver in that BMW.
And that is a huge thing, is Arthur Camera. I honestly, times like this, I feel like we need to have the Jaws music on standby, because it's the sight of that BMW coming raining down on that poor innocent little McLaren is it's a scary sight. Halloween season well and truly in effect here at Barcelona, and Arthur Camera looks like he's hungry for a little nibble on that McLaren. You get the impression that it's not only is Camera very, very fast in that BMW, but Robbie Stapleford starting to struggle for pace in that McLaren, Jesse.
I can't speak for SRO series with the BOP and all that, but I do know in other series that the McLaren does do that. It's almost like it burns through its tires, and it's a bit more rough on them in comparison to some of the other manufacturers. And I don't know if that's the same here or not, but certainly I've seen in other series McLaren struggle near the end of a long stint such as this one, especially one as physical as this, where you have to be on it. It's almost like a time attack. You go out there to do your hour stint or so, and you think, oh, well, it's an endurance race, it's a 3-hour race. And yes, it is, but for you, it's a 1-hour time attack. It's go out there, make the fastest lap every single time that you can. And there's an old adage that we use around here. It's race the track, not the other people. And that's certainly what all these drivers will have been doing, trying to run the quickest laps possible. There's just no time to rest. It's unrelenting. Stapleford can't rest. He can't rest his tires. The only one I think in this race that's ever had a moment of reprieve is Richter in the 14, who, like you said, may have got some fuel saving out of the 14 when he was stuck behind the 33 for nearly 30 minutes. And talk about pit stops coming up. I wonder if that'll factor in. Maybe they got to take a little less fuel than everybody else.
And that could very well be one of the factors that we'll be talking about over the next 2 hours and 10 minutes. But one that we do need to talk about is this man here, Marek Shintz for Racing Line Motorsport, teamed up, of course, with Kevin Ciclari. He will be handing over the cars very, very shortly. And again, I mean, there's nothing more that Marek can do right now. He just has to drive his race. He just has to keep pushing that car as much as he can, keeping consistent, keeping it steady, and he's still the fastest man on track. 144.1 that last time round, and the fuel tank's starting to get a little bit leaner. The car's starting to get a little bit more lighter underneath itself, and being able to stretch its legs just that ever slightly more, as we have, as I said, 2 hours 10 minutes. Difficult to believe that we've had, Jesse, 28 laps in the book already, and it feels like literally we had the first 10 minutes ago, about just a couple of laps ago.
I feel like we spent 30 minutes trying to figure out what happened on the opening lap, and then the rest has flown by. There's battles all over the track, and it's brilliant stuff. It is what you expect from the top of the top racing series here from Europe, and it has lived up to the hype. And the championship battle, it's swinging towards the 51, but it's not done yet. To finish first, you must first finish. There's another one for you. So trying to do that, and I have been paying very close attention to the 51's lap times and the 191's for that matter. Like you said, Shins is still quicker ever so slightly on each lap. That will make them feel just a little bit better. And, of course, Arthur Kramer here continuing to stalk the 38 McLaren of Stapleford here as the car that is a lap down, getting out of the way there. You love to see that as nice back marker etiquette.
You absolutely do, and it's just a polite thing to do. It's a very aware thing to do from the driver there to just sort of move out the way and let it happen. There's no point fighting something that you're not actually fighting there. But we see Andrea Miato then just on the tail end of that 129 Lamborghini. This is a cracking little battle that's been developing all the way through the order as well. At 129, obviously, Jaratana sharing it with David Pertil for Raton Racing by Clash number 1. And you see the way that the Lamborghini really struggles to get the power down on the exit of that corner there, Jesse. The back end of that car twitching and moving about all the way as it's trying desperately to get some purchase, to get some traction down on the track.
We talk about cars that maybe struggle a bit. I know the Lamborghini's dynamics change quite a bit as well from being on a fuel load to being empty. So that plus the tire degradation that certainly they are feeling now. Every driver will have been telling their team, the tires are gone, they're overheating, they're doing something, because it's certainly an uncomfortable phase of the race. And perhaps where you need the absolute most focus is right now. You need the most focus right now. The car's not handling the best. It's not how you set the car up, and it's a little bit of a thing there. But Kramer continuing to run down the McLaren, looks to the inside there for a second, pulls back in line. Just look at the size difference of those two cars there.
Just saying as well, Akos Gietvan in the 192 getting a drive-through penalty for Kessel Racing by Racing Line. That may be for a track limits excursion, because I can't see anything on the penalty channel as well, so we'll keep you updated with that. But Akos Gietvan, a bad day going from bad to worse for the 192, and confirmation it is for track limits. Right, back to Arthur Kammerer then. Patience is massive right now with 2 hours and 6 seconds left. 2 hours 6 minutes left to go in this race. And what I love as well, Jesse, is the fact that we've obviously got about a 45-second delay before what we see and what everyone else sees on our various social channels. So they've just experienced the wonders of a car going through the wall at 120 miles an hour. It's something quite peaceful about that, isn't it? It's almost like meditation for the mind here. But again, it's just one of those temporary blips that happens as the client is talking to the server. The client tells the server, well, no, I'm not actually in a wall, I'm still on the racetrack, and then they agree what's actually happened. So by the time you see it, that's already been resolved, and nothing actually happens to the car or the driver behind the wheel. So for the most part, we see it looks spectacular, but the driver doesn't even notice anything actually hanging on there. But Andrea Miato back with them, and still on that charge for 11th and 12th position here. That Lamborghini, again, it may be struggling, but it's doing a really good job of holding on to the Honda, to the Aston Martin here. The Aston Martin, typically a very, very good car around the GT3 tracks, but Miato, I can't believe Miato is actually the lead Aston Martin right now.
That is surprising outside the top 10. I would have expected them to at least have one inside the top 10, fighting a bit further up. And I didn't see the damage report from, well, sort of before we got to turn once, and I suspect that there were a couple of Astons involved, and that might be the root of the problem. Here is, once again, the 62 trying to get this position away. Credit to the 38 of Stapleford here. keeping the 62 behind them. Kammerer is going to be a little bit frustrated at this point, just sort of pacing out the 38. Must know that they're a little bit quicker is Arthur, but Stapleford holding their ground. I mentioned in the pre-race, you can do that here, even if you are slightly on a different pace, maybe not quite up to the pace of those behind you. Good placement of the car, you can keep in front of them.
You absolutely can, and that was a very well put political response to that on a different pace. I just straight up call them slow. If you're slower than the car behind, then you can absolutely do that. But it brings up a brilliant point, because you're racing on a completely different strategy to everyone else. And the thing is that it's such a relative term, because we see Robbie Stapleford here, right? And he honestly looks like he's going backwards as we see Cameron line that up. Is he going to go, pulls it out into the turn one? There was a car coming out pit lane. Oh, wow, that is huge awareness from the pair of them there. Robbie Stapleford's going to dive on the accelerator pedal and try and get it going. And again, like, there we go. There's a perfect example of what we saw on the lead down there. The two of them saw that they were close to each other. They got as close as they possibly could, but they still sort of kept it in there. And the BMW runs about wide. That is always going to be Kammerer's corner every single day of the week. That is a move well done. And yeah, really love to see it.
How on earth did both of them make it through there? There was a Lexus coming out of the pit lane, and then all of a sudden you're three wide breaking down into turn one, and they all sort of made it look very easy. They stayed side by side through the S's complex, and Kammerer ended up with that position. That's excellent concentration. That's excellent driving. I mean, a little bit of fender contact, but, cars have fenders for a reason, right?
They absolutely do, and the reason that worked is because of Robbie Stapleford. And this is the one thing that we don't talk about enough, is the fact that we see amazing moves all the time, but it takes two cars to allow that to happen. It takes the car being overtaken to not fight it to an unnecessary degree. And Robbie Stapleford is well within his rights to hold on to that position and do whatever he can, but he's smarter than that. He's smarter than to think, oh, I'm going to have to fight for this tooth and nail. Instead, what he's going to do, if he's got any chance of, he's either A, recognise that the pace just isn't there and that fighting it might actually degrade his strategy or push him even further back, or he's thinking, right, I'll let him get this corner because I'll then have a better entry for that corner. So the drivers are usually thinking 2-3 turns in advance. And also, he didn't force the situation. He saw they were side by side. There was more than likely a bit of contact there, but the two of them kept that to an absolute minimum. They gave each other the space that was absolutely necessary, and that is something that we don't always see, like on that lap 1 incident. So great driving both there from Arthur Kammerer and from Robbie Stapleford.
We saw, I think, our first pit stop right there. That is the first scheduled stop for that Lamborghini as they come down pit lane a little bit earlier than we might have thought, but they are in, and that is still on schedule. And certainly maybe did that as a defensive move, come in and do the undercut, get it all taken care of, and get back out on the racetrack. I wonder if maybe they'll do a driver change as well, as the pit window is certainly open, 65-minute stint limit. So every team has to come down pit lane at least by the 65-minute mark in the race. They don't have to change driver at that interval, however, and that's what we were talking about earlier. What will the strategy be? I reckon the strategy for the fast teams will be stick with what you got, unless you are in a battle, of course. Then maybe if your fast driver isn't in, then go ahead and put them in the car. 286 here trying to make up some spots, but it's also got a lap car sort of in behind them as well, as the battle for the top 20 does certainly continue here. That's the last thing you want, David, is a car that's not on your lap right behind you, distracting you like that. But unfortunately, that's endurance racing. Yeah, it really is. And that car behind him is actually Darren McCormack in the number 1 Aston Martin, the Williams Esports car, in 12th position. So it'll actually be Cameron getting blue flags at the moment as he's trying to hunt down the number 27 of Danilo Santoro. So he's definitely caught in between a rock and a hard place. And there you go, Darren McCormack has just given up. He's just thinking, no, I'm not even going to think about that. And yeah, that's a real 3000 IQ. Really smart play there from Darren McCormack. Decide not going to
hold himself up behind these lap traffic and just jump into the pits there.
McCormack there, I got to say, I love that move, as nearly missing the corner there was Birdport. Getting back onto the track will lose a little bit of time, but I love that move by the one. Certainly his team was probably shouting at him, just don't get involved. Just don't get involved. We, of course, more to lose. McCormack in the one team, of course, racing for potential of points if they can get a few more positions today. And even though it is the end of the championship, it is still bragging rights, even if you're not working for the overall championship. Of course, there is a lot at stake here today, as we're going to hand out some hardware. And points do definitely matter. It doesn't matter if it's 1 or 25.
No, everything is to play for today. And what always gets me as well, Jesse, is the fact that these drivers, for all of them, is bragging rights. That's the biggest thing that comes out of it. Money and having some new toys to play with is always a great addition. But especially when you see them on the YouTube chat and all the teams and all the fans and everything, all the banter that they give to all the other teams as well is brilliant to see. And this always goes through all of the season. So we're very, very grateful that they've got such a big contingent out there and supporting them and being vocally supportive as well there. Just having a look there, how on earth has Giovanni De Salvo opened up about a 5-second gap on Arthur Camara in about 10 laps there? That is insane pace that De Salvo's shown in that Ferrari. But Camara isn't a slouch either. He is doing about the same lap times as De Salvo, but is a significant way back there. So that Ferrari absolutely chewing its way through this first stint.
Certainly, they had the opening lap sort of incident. They put that behind them, immediately took third, and De Salvo's never really looked back, ended up taking second about 15 minutes ago, and is now set sail. Camera behind Camera can still see them, but that's just about it. Chris Huque in the 22 for GPX Racing by Ren Welton. They're down and gone for their first stop. A driver change on that car. Samir Ibrahim out, and Huque in the 22. So there you have it. That was a car that was in a battle, David, and now a driver change. Maybe Chris, the quicker of the two, maybe? I don't know. Samir and Chris, very similar on pace, I thought.
They really are. They're two very, very fast drivers, and I wouldn't like to try and pick between the two of them. What I would say is that Chris Hook, I think, tends to get better results. Samir somehow has really, really bad luck, always finds himself through instance of other people's making. It's almost never him. But we'll certainly see how that progresses. But if you've just joined us, ladies and gentlemen, at the top of the hour, then we've got 2 hours left to go in this final race of the season here at the GT World Challenge Europe Esports Championship by Fanatec. And we are here for round 5 at Barcelona. The championship could not be tighter poised as your leaders come into pit lane then. It's the 191 Racing Line Motorsport machine of Marek Schintz who is in the lead of this race. Championship contender though, championship leader Giovanni De Salvo into pit lane, handing it over to David Tanitza. They're in second place in the race, but they are currently in the lead of the championship and doing everything that they need right now to secure this title. Arthur Camara is into the pits as well in the 62, likely handing things over to Gregor Schill. And we're going to take a couple of minutes to find out how this all pans through, because you've now got cars coming out in the middle of faster traffic. And again, this is the 15 minutes here, Jesse, where things can go horribly, horribly wrong.
Well, pit stops. They left it really late. I was just thinking, I was doing the math, I was writing it down on the paper, and they left that to the absolute limit. Surgical precision required. Imagine having not even a spin, but just a little mishap, a trip to the beach, and some of these cars wouldn't have made it onto pit lane in time. That's all it would have taken, but that did not happen, thankfully, for the entire field. As we see here, the 4 fighting for position with Schill now in the 62.
Yeah, that's a huge move there. So the number 4 there have got ahead of Jota. So Ross McGregor behind the wheel of the 38s now, and that means that Hits behind the wheel of the Mercedes, the number 4 Hout Racing Team Schindler, and that is a huge jump in the pit lane, because not only have they got the jump, but that is a significant amount of time, and they're right onto the back of Gregor Schill in that 62. And the one thing that I've noticed here, Jesse, and I don't know if you'll agree with me, but it always looks like the BMW takes way longer than any of the other cars to get its tyres up to speed and up to temperature.
Yeah, it does. It's weird. It's what put me off driving the BMW myself initially, but it does get there, and it's an absolute treat. And you certainly have to warm them up as quickly as possible, scrub the tires in, corner extra hard, get it in there as quickly as you possibly can do. But once you do get that hooked up, it can be an absolute treat. An excellent fight here. What must have happened on the 38's pit stop? Dropped a few positions. It's really hard to tell.
And this is exactly going back to the point that I made just before the pit stops. It's so easy on your pit stop to lose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds, and that is all it takes to put you tumbling down the order. Thankfully, that's not the case for Ross McGregor, just down there in 5th position, but has lost a lot of time. That's 3.5 seconds that they are behind Hit in that number 4 car. But yeah, Benedict Hits here for Hout Racing Team Schindler. You wouldn't put it past them to make a move on Gregor Schill right now. That gap between second and third place, 5.6 seconds, and it's only going to get bigger while Schill is constantly looking in his mirrors right now. So this is a fascinating little battle that we've got going on for 3rd and 4th position. That Mercedes looks very well hooked up coming through the final part of the circuit here. And Gregor Schill, it's on the straights that BMW just absolutely roars away. The straight line speed is absurd, but the Mercedes can really take a lot of speed into the corners.
Well, Hout Racing Team Schindler actually scored their very first points in the last round 4 at the Nürburgring, so it's trending in the right direction late in the season. They're looking for a little bit more than that right here. Instead of getting a few points, they're looking for a podium spot. How thrilled would they be to end the season like that, and certainly in the hunt to look how calm Hits looks there. Calm, focused, in the groove, running down the 62. And that's the best thing as a driver, David, you can hear from your team. First of all, you are faster than him, go get him.
It's almost like the green flag. It's almost like permission to go charging down and go and hunt your prey. But yeah, this is going to take a couple of laps to resolve itself. And if it does, I honestly, personally think that the BMW is going to have the upper hand in this, because we can see the wider line that Hits is trying to take, trying to get some air, and also trying to possibly distract that BMW in front of him. But like, let's face it, that BMW is not going anywhere right now, and I don't think Benedict Hits is the type of driver, certainly from what I've seen of him, to make any lunges to get that position. At the moment, I think Gregor Schill and Hits realise that there's an hour and 50 minutes left to go in the race, and let alone we've got a huge fight going on in chat by supporters of this team right now, the BMW and the Mercedes. It's been decided that the Mercedes, this was a deliberate ploy to sit behind the BMW, and it's not that it can't get past the top. You know, this is the brilliant strategy if that's the case. You know, that's again, I say it all the time, 3,000 IQ thinking, you just to deliberately be slower and sit behind the car in front.
Yes, it was always my intention to not be leading. Yes, it was always it has nothing to do with the fact that the BMW is very wide and has a lot of pace as well. But good battle between them, a good battle here. Nicholas Albaldeo Caymans in the middle of a sandwich right now. This looks like rush hour traffic right here. Hildebrand's in there, Kundashavlu, Fender. They're all here racing for this spot, and it's around 15th. But if you come from the back to the front of this pack, you could be threatening for the top 10 here in a few little while. But look at this pack come through. You get side by side with somebody, it pulls more people in, and nobody here seems to have the big advantage. Look at this.
That was an amazing move there from Hillebrand to get through that, as he's been chased down by Nicholas Albedeo Camins there for Odox Motorsport. You can see actually, Nicholas, there's a great point for us to chat about there, Jesse. VR, some of these guys and girls out there on the grid taking part in VR headsets, and from personal experience, the intensity that it adds on endurance events is just unparalleled.
Oh, I thought there was going to be contact right there in the background, and there may have been slight contact, but it wasn't enough to do anything a bit dangerous there. But all things considered, good racing in this group. Yeah, VR, just going back to that for a moment, VR is a game changer. I am a personal fan of VR. I love VR, use VR myself, and I'm of the opinion that it makes you a better driver because you can turn your head. You can get your sort of 3D sort of vision, the way that we assume things and objects to be there. It's easier than looking at a flat screen. It's so hard to explain to people, David, of how good you can pinpoint a car on a curve in VR because it's a 3D object versus a flat screen. But it's so good, and I mean, personally, I just love it for the immersion, but there might be, like I was saying, an added benefit to some of these drivers for pace as well.
It really is. It lends itself so well to sim racing. So, like yourself, I'm a big sort of day one believer in VR from a very early stage, and it's. I'm just trying to put in towards what you were saying there about the difference being it. I think depth perception is a massive thing. So, you know, you feel more in tune with the car. So obviously for drivers like Michael Kunzatzioglu here for FFS Racing, it's a static viewpoint that you've got. So you've got fixed point of where you're getting all your information from. So it's very limited in terms of what you can see. Now, obviously, you've got things like triples, you've got ultra widescreen monitors, and those are all change that idea of just having the one monitor. But for me personally, I absolutely love VR racing. It is more of a physical tax when you're doing endurance races, as we see Dare McCormack right on the back end of Mikhail Nowakowski in that Carbon SimSport Blue through down into turn one. Bit of a wobble there from Nowakowski, and that allows Dare McCormack to get right underneath the wing. But are they going to be able to take any advantage of it? They're going to be side by side coming out of turn number 4. Battle lane breakers, in you go. Dare McCormack takes the position, but has he gone too deep? No, he hasn't. Takes it like candy from a baby. Just to finish off that conversation about VR, in endurance races, it's very different from doing like a 10-15 lap race to doing an hour to a 2 hour race, because the heat from the headset is quite considerable, the weight on your head, and also the eye strain is so much more than what you get from just using monitors.
Yeah, I've never exited a VR racing session where I was not a puddle, so it is very much a consideration. Of course, you're strapping basically televisions to your face as well, but it's so fantastic as a tool. And I've met so many people at ACC in particular that are such fans. They champion VR, and I eventually tried it in ACC, and I just won't go back. It's absolutely brilliant stuff. And well, the race does continue into the second hour, and hour one was absolutely top of the heap. We had just about everything you could possibly imagine in that, and we continue on that scale as we expect to see battles throughout this entire race. All of these competitors are so very close to one another in speed, and certainly we talked about who would and wouldn't change drivers. Well, our leader in the 191, they did not change drivers. I didn't think they would keep the hot hand in the car. Some of the other teams did, especially a lot of these middle teams, but some of them didn't. Hildebrand still in the 94 in front of the 121 here.
Yeah, that's right. And the like of Marek Schintz still in the 191 at the front. More importantly, the pace that he's got, I don't know where this has come from in that Bentley, but given that he's just come out of the pits, he's been setting purple lap after purple lap in that car, 143.4, 143.3. I mean, that is just ridiculous. It's about a second, Jesse, faster than every other car on track, that pace that he's setting there. That is just scary, scary stuff, and certainly amplifying the lead. But again, they're doing everything that they possibly can. They're doing everything that they have to do. So it's a difficult one to say. We've got another penalty coming in. That is the incident between cars 286 and 121. That is Nicholas Albadeo Cummins in the Odox Motorsport machine, and the 286 of Cameron Bridport for Team BUSR. It's a warning to car 121 for avoidable contact there. So good to see that race control really avoiding penalties where they can and just trying to do a bit of a slap on the wrist.
Well, yeah, they're certainly trying. You love to see that out of them. They don't want to take anyone out of the race as much as anybody here doesn't want to see the race impeded by a penalty, and they're giving them the leeway of, okay, it was avoidable contact. I'm going to tell you that it was avoidable, and hope they can leave it at that. You love to see it. Applaud to all of the stewards working here today. And what about our cameraman? Absolutely exquisite job that they have been doing today as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. And this is the thing we spoke about off camera beforehand. We feel spoiled from the amazing production team behind the scenes here at SRO Esports. It's always brilliant, top-notch entertainment, and we hope that you guys along at home all enjoy what you're watching as well. So Chris is making his way along in the number 22 just now, doing a cracking job for GPX Racing by Renfelton. And the problem that I've always had is obviously being Scottish. I am absolutely terrible, Jesse, at pronunciation. So I've just realised for the past year and a half that I've pronounced poor Chris Houquet's name completely wrong, and nobody's ever pulled me up on it.
I talked to Chris about 2 years ago about how to pronounce his name. I talked to many German-speaking people as well about how to pronounce it, and I'm only partially right. Fun fact about Chris Houquet, by the way, he was the first ever Discord friend I ever had.
Oh, that's lovely. Oh,
it's heartwarming, isn't it? Yeah, it's one of those things.
Chris, are you still friends with him?
Yeah, I haven't said anything negative about him on a broadcast before, so he has no reason to unfriend me. But brilliant
that
man.
explains why my friends list is at 0 then.
Oh, dearie me. We could go on all day about that.
Yeah.
But no, lovely, well-spoken, soft-spoken individual, Chris Houquet, and just incredibly fast. I once referred to him as unfair.
I was trying to, sorry, you'll have to repeat that there, because I got completely distracted by a production team talking nonsense about Discord there. Sorry, Jesse, what was that?
Were they making fun of me? No, I was talking about Chris Houquet being a very soft-spoken individual, and his race pace is just, I call it unfair.
I think that is though about a lot of the drivers on here as well, because I look at them taking part here, and the problem is that I like sim racing, right? I love taking part in sim races. I've never considered myself as very, very fast or competitive, but I enjoy taking part in it. And then when you go and you think that you're reasonably okay, and then you sit in the same server as any one of these 40 drivers or 40 teams on the grid, and you're just like, you're questioning your life choices by that point. It's just the level of pace they have got, all of them, is just beyond belief. It's almost scary sometimes, because I look at myself and I'm usually like maybe 4, 5, 6 seconds off of their pace, and it's like, how? Where can you possibly get that time? And they do it lap after lap. I mean, no word of a lie. I'm looking at live timing right now, and I'm seeing 16 cars doing 144s within 1 second of each other, still an hour and 20 minutes into a 3-hour endurance race. That speaks for itself.
It sure does. It's downright unfair, but it is absolutely brilliant to see these tacticians with a wheel in their hand go out there and be able to set those laps. And there's a couple of examples that I've had. You talk about being 4 or 5 seconds off the pace. I can commiserate with you, David, on that. And it's where are you finding the time to do that? And one particular time, I was 3 seconds off of some of the Esports pros, and I thought I was doing pretty good. Turns out they didn't have a setup in the car, and the tires were cold. So really wish they just let me have that one, but they didn't.
The good thing about Assetto Corsa Competizione as well is the fact that they have got out of the box a very good, that aggressive setup seems to just work for the majority of cars. So it will put you in a really, really good position. But the starting one that you get out the box, I mean, I remember my first car in Assetto Corsa Competizione was the BMW, and its normal guise is just so slow. We were speaking about that right at the start, but the balance of performance really brings it in. And I mean, the setups are so important, and it brings another part of why there is such an important need for these teams to all work in their race that they do. They do so much work before the races, developing setups and developing the cars and for their drivers as well. Because what you've got to remember is that the driver market is always open. There's always drivers switching from team to team to team, and those drivers are used to different ways of driving the car. So it's finding a balance between those two drivers.
I can tell you this about setups and all that. We talked about earlier about strategy, communication, focus, and all that. There's another one: compromise with the setup. What may be a great setup for one driver of a team might be subpar for another one. So there's compromise in the setup. There's a lot of work that goes into that. These teams do not just show up an hour before the race, qualify, and go to race. You mentioned that earlier. They don't. They're practicing for a week or weeks, depending on what series it is, to get it right, to compromise, to come up with something that they're all relatively on the same pace with. And if they're not, they have to figure out maybe why a driver isn't quite as good here as they are somewhere else. There's courses for horses, as they say. So it's a whole thing. It's a whole big production. As big as we are as a production, they have their own as a team. It's the same thing, and it's brilliant to see it all come together, as that light blue BMW was stopped in a very precarious spot right there.
I think they were just off the line trying to let a lot of the cars through. I'm trying to get an idea on that. I think that might have actually been the number 12 BMW of Boristan Automotive Motorsport E-Team, and just kind of letting everyone out of the way and let them out of danger. Just bringing you up to speed then on our top 10 so far. It is still Marek Schintz in the 191 Racing Line Motorsport machine, out in front by 17 seconds. That is a commanding lead over the number 51 of David Tanitsa for FDA Academy Esports. In second place, third place is currently Gregor Schill in the 62 BMW Sim G2 Esports machine, and then in fourth place is the number 4 of Benedict Hitz for Haupt Racing Team Schindler, and then in fifth position is Ross McGregor for the 38 of Jota in the McLaren, and then it's Chris Hauke in the 22, Houke in the number 22 GPX Racing by Renfelten machine. In sixth place, seventh place is Giorgio Simonini in the Audi, the 157. In for St. Lock by R8G, and then it is Lars Kisser for Unicorns of Love in P8 in the Mercedes, the number 14. Chris Hartfeld in the number 34 Predator Sim Racing by R8G Porsche in 9th position, and then in 10th position Timo Prost in the 33 AKA ASP by GTWR machine. Top 10 just now, but with an hour and a half to go, we're rapidly approaching the halfway of this final race of the season. It does look like it's looking very, very good for the 191 of Marek Schintz, but at the moment that's looking like it's going to be nothing more than just like a pat on the back for the championship.
Yeah, they have a 17.5 second lead on Tunisia in the 51 right now, but they need a little bit more than that. They need the 51 to fall off massively. I don't think that's going to happen today, I'm afraid to tell the Racing Line guys, and they might both be having some beverages after this one for very different reasons. I gotta ask you, David, if you're in a championship like this and you win 2 of the last races and you do everything you possibly can to win it, and you come up just shy, Is that bittersweet? Like, on one hand, you win a bunch of races in the biggest European competition that there could be, but at the same token, you miss the grand prize by that much. Is it bittersweet at all, or do you not focus on that, do you wonder?
I think after the season is done and dusted, of course, there's a certain level of post-mortem goes on. I mean, you have to look back at Monza round one, when it only scored 6 points from that opening round, where it was full marks for FDA. It's little bits like that. Had they gotten any more points from that race, we would have been in a completely different variation for this final race. But the problem is, we don't have a time machine. They did the result that they can do. And also, we're guilty of this. We say that, and we say, is there anything else can they have done? And I think that what they need to do, and what I hope they do, is recognise the achievement of what they've done is come in second place in a field of 35 teams who are far and above the best sim racing teams here in Assetto Corsa Competizione. That is a high level of standard to get yourself up into that second spot. Yes, it's going to be frustrating that you're ultimately not going to get that top position as it stands, but that's always going to be the way. And that just comes down to the whole thing of real life racing and sim racing. It's never enough. Unless you're in top spot, that podium, you're never happy with yourself.
It's hard to comprehend for myself, someone that's very average in lap time. It's so hard to comprehend just how good these teams are. Folks at home, go and try to run a 42.416 here at Barcelona. See if you can do that. It's very difficult, and a lot of these teams make it look like it's completely easy. And I think second stings is my take, David. Initially, second stings, but when you look at it, you have to look at like, oh well, if we would have done better in one more race just by a few points, it would have been a different story. We still were second in that championship, in that massive championship of all those great teams and drivers. So you take that, and I think you have to put a spin on that. You can't dwell on what might have been and what wasn't. You have to look forward to, how do we get more points next time, or what is the one thing going forward that we could do better that could potentially make us better, have a better result in the championship. And that's the thing. That's what they'll all do, though, unfortunately. No team rests on their laurels. They all put their nose back to the grindstone. There's always a championship coming up next, and it's basically start from square one all over again.
Yeah, it really, really is. And the problem with that is the fact that obviously these drivers and teams, Jesse, do so many different championships across the world, across various different platforms, not just Assetto Corsa Competizione, doing their best to represent the brands and the sponsors and the teams that they're on board with. So it will be I think the answer to your question is, I think it'll be a very short-lived sting. It'll be yes, we didn't get the win, but we threw everything that we could at it when we were in a position. Because also what you've got to remember is, after the round one and round two, they maybe didn't get themselves into the position that they thought they were going to be competing for the lead of the championship anyway. So yeah, it's a bittersweet one for them for a little bit, but I think they've got so many other things on the boil just now that they really won't have too much time to worry about it.
Yeah, you nailed it. You really do have a short memory in sim racing. There's always a new championship. There's always a new race, a new challenge. So you don't have time. There's no time to dwell on it. There's no use in doing that to begin with. It is perhaps one of the best things about sim racing. There's always another race, another series. There's always another chance. And for a lot of these teams, certainly after today, they will likely have some form of meeting. They'll reflect on what went right, what went wrong, what could they do better in the future, and they'll build on that. And rather unfortunately for average people like me, they're going to come back faster and do this all over again. And that's the torrid pace that sim racing is. A lot of these teams will race many of these sort of races a weekend and all that, and varying degree. And this, of course, just happens to be the pinnacle of endurance racing for the European Championship.
Absolutely, I couldn't have said that any better myself, and it means a lot for these drivers and these teams. They put so much work in behind the scenes to get prepared for these races, and now, thankfully, we're seeing after that lap one chaos, we're starting to see what it really means to be in esports. This sort of, constantly chipping away at these times, constantly pushing the cars in front of you. We've seen some wonderful racecraft displayed throughout the 3 hours, and of course you get some of the chaos and the carnage happening, and we have to look at that in the replays, but we sometimes miss these really subtle, nuanced little battles that are going on as we see a Lamborghini moving out the way into the pit stops very early there, into the pits there. Was that Barasini? I think that was actually one of the lapped Lamborghinis coming into the pit lane, but this is Luca Berg for Rocket Simsport then, coming down the line there, and couple of cars just behind. I think that's actually third place, isn't it? I think that's Gregor Schill that's just making his way. Yep, that's up the inside there. So you've got the number 92 just behind him, and this is a crazy place for Luca Berg to be in right now, because almost getting swamped with all the different cars that are there, and very few that he has to worry about, apart from that 192 behind him of Matteo Blotto.
It's a unenviable position Luca Berg's in for Rocket Sim Sports. You got the lead lap cars coming through, and you're trying to not be in the way, but you're also not trying to lose time, as you cannot afford to do that. By the way, that was Fulvio Berrezzini in the 130 coming down the pit lane. That's an unscheduled stop for that Lamborghini, and it's hard to speculate on what just brought them in this early. They will have to come in once more. They can't make it to the end from here, regardless. So certainly a unscheduled stop for the 130. That's going to take them right the way out of any chance of a decent finish today, rather unfortunately.
You hate to see it, but unfortunately that is the way that the cookie crumbles in these sim races right now. But this is a cracking little battle between the Honda and the Aston Martin that we were just seeing there. But we cut away, because having a look at this is a brilliant move for Ross McGregor to get past. That is Chris Houke in the 6th position, just behind Ross McGregor now. So yeah, he's got that move done, and he'll be very happy with that one indeed. What I want to ask chat though is the fact that Benedict Hitz, the conversation was that this was planned. He was going to be behind the BMW deliberately. Well, that gap was granted about 4 seconds, now down to 1.5 seconds with traffic, but Hitz really not able to stay on the back of Gregor Schill.
I think maybe they were... we got a replay of a dive into the turn. That does not work, does it? Taking the escape road there. Didn't want to turn back onto the track. There's sometimes, David, you can't see out of your rear view camera. Most of these cars don't actually have physical mirrors anymore. They have cameras, and you can't see. And rather than rejoining and potentially getting a penalty for an unsafe rejoin, once you're off the track, you just straight line it and get back on the track where the road straightens up just a bit. But significant contact there. That will be damage on both of those cars.
And that's the worst possible time for that to happen, halfway through, when you're just getting your bearings on the race itself, and you're trying to get through as Luca Berg moves out of the way of these two cars and compromises the Porsche. That allows the McLaren then of Ross McGregor to get away a little bit there, but not too much, because they're straight onto the back of that Ferrari of, I believe that's the 192 of Matteo Blotto that's just up in front of them. So this is the difficult part. We said before about lap traffic and having to make their way through traffic as well, but I don't get it, is the fact that these cars, all of the top 20, are very fast indeed. It just makes it so difficult to actually happen.
Yeah, it does. I have an actual answer on the 130 Lamborghini. That was their scheduled pit stop. They've been out of sequence this entire race. They had a minor spin early in the race. They came down pit lane near just about 30 minutes into the race. So that was a scheduled stop for them, but rather besides, they still have to come in again, and that, again, will end their sort of run for any decent position today, nonetheless. Well, what do you think Chris Huke and the 22's thinking after that pass by McGregor now? It makes you wonder what's going on with the 22 Porsche for GPX Racing.
I wonder if he's just trying to play it cool for the next part of the stint, given the fact that Ross McGregor got past. Obviously, we know that McLaren is good at the middle part of its stint, but the McLaren seems to fall away towards the end of its stint. What we also have to remember as well is now that Hit, McGregor and Huke have been brought together on the track now. They're about maybe 3 seconds between the three of them. So I think that Huke will be happy enough knowing that he still has positions that he can make, and maybe wanting to see what Ross McGregor does with Benedict Hitz just up in front. So it could just be patience from the Porsche driver, but we'll have to wait and see. I think the pace from Huke kind of suggests otherwise, that those last couple of laps, 145s, high 145s, when the top three are doing low 144s.
Yeah, that's good analysis there. I think you're spot on with that. And was that a flashing up the lights a little bit from Chris coming down the front straightaway? A little bit of gamesmanship as well. We haven't seen too much light flashing thus far, but it does certainly come into play. The later into a race you get, the more desperate you get, and you start hoping for anything that can help you, including flashing of the lights. Nicholas Hildebrand, the rear wing of his Acura, looking at the 96 of Kundek Sauglu, and they're trying to get through in the very pink 96. And is that fender in the 89 BMW behind him? I can't quite see, but I think it is indeed, all racing for the 14th place position.
Absolutely is. So the three cars here within 3 seconds of each other on the track, and it looks like Fender is improving that condition of the BMW. Great start from Fender as well, because I'm just going back to double check where he actually started. He started down in 22nd place, so a good positional gain for Angus Fender there, up to 16th there. Maybe not as much as some of the cars that we've seen, but that seems more on par with just, a really good solid drive rather than straight up luck that we've seen from some of the other drivers. Now, you were asking about what is Chris Huke thinking, and this is what he's thinking right now, because look at that, he's caught right back up to Ross McGregor. I wonder if he's been putting that McLaren deliberately under pressure, knowing that he'll catch up to the 192 of Blotto in front and possibly overdrive that car a little bit. And we've seen what happens to McLaren once it burns through its tyres. The pace just falls off a cliff. And now I actually think Huke is in the good seats here for the GPX Racing by Red Velton as they go side by side down into turn one here, because he's got the pace. And look at how much that McLaren is having to force itself into the corners here, Jesse.
It very well could have been tactics, and like you said, it could have been the strategy of the Porsche and the team to maybe try to slow down just a little bit, work that in the strategy, and now trying to get by the 38 in front of him. McGregor now fully under pressure, so even if the 22 had any sort of issue, it certainly has gone away. Maybe they were saving fuel, maybe the car didn't come to them immediately, but here late it certainly has. We saw at the end of the first stint, we saw the 38 McLaren fall off a little bit then. Could the same thing be creeping up here late into this stint? I mean, it's not too awfully late. There's still 20-some minutes left for most of these drivers in this stint, but even still, a decent fight going on here, and just sort of keeping in the mirrors, not even attempting to make a move. That seems to tell me that Chris is pretty happy with where he is right now. He's not trying to make a bold move. He's not trying to fall out of line either. He's merely pacing the car in front of him.
Yeah, and this is the lull section of the race that we were talking about earlier. You get these moments where it's like 15 minutes of frenetic action, then half an hour of cool, calm and collected. Almost, it's almost like they're hot lapping. They're just putting in these incredible pace times, lap after lap after lap, for about half an hour, and then you start seeing pit stops coming in again and everybody fighting. That's exactly what we're seeing here just now, because we're on the cusp of going into the second round of pit stops in about 25 minutes time, And at the moment, Chris Hauke is doing a cracking job there for GPX Racing by Renville, holding on to the back of Ross McGregor, but McGregor just able to stretch away a little bit now. That gap to almost half a second. Meanwhile, up in front as well, Benedict Hetz still just 2 seconds behind Gregor Schill. So Gregor Schill being kept to account and kept honest here. But I'm going to throw that one word in that no driver wants to hear. Drive-through penalties for track limits. We've not seen very many of them. I think we've seen one of them so far. But I wonder how much of an issue going through the rest of that race is going to be for these drivers up the top of the field here, Jesse.
You had to say that, didn't you, David? You couldn't just not say that. You had to go on and say that. You know what a broadcaster can do whenever they say things like that. Yeah, it could very well be. We always have the ever-present threat, especially in an endurance race, that there will be drive-through penalties for track limits. For the uninitiated, it's very simple. You get 3 warnings by ACC, and then on the 4th time that you violate the track limits, you get a very frustrating drive-through penalty that you are forced to take within 3 laps of receiving the penalty. So this place loves to give you drive-through penalties on some of the curbs and corner exits, not to mention if you hit the old escape road really quickly, sometimes it'll give you one there as well. You can take avoiding action to try and be a nice driver and all of a sudden get yourself into more trouble. And we haven't seen anything like that in the past hour or so, but you have to wonder how many warnings are some of these teams working on right now.
And that is the little puzzle that we're going to have answered for us over the next hour and 20 minutes. And it's not so much just because of the drive-through, but it's also the change in the drivers for the risk. So you, obviously, like you said, you get the 3 warnings. Now, if a driver's on a second of 3 warnings, they're going to drive very, very differently, you would imagine, to as if they were only on 1 or they have 0 warnings for track limits. They're going to be very, very cautious. So if we suddenly see the pace of a driver just drop off a cliff or drop by about half a second, then we will have a fair idea of what is going on. And the thing is in our YouTube chat, Amaris Bimiradi, one of our wonderful moderators here on the GT World channel, they know the score. They know that it's just going to be, it's like a tower of Jenga. You know, one person gets one, then suddenly everybody gets a drive-through penalty in very rapid succession. So I'm not hoping to tempt fate. I'm just going from my experience of these events and how they tend to unfold. So hopefully everyone keeps it clean. But what I don't want is any of the important results being decided by something like that.
Oh my goodness. Could you imagine if something were to happen to any of the drivers in the top 3? You would have to hope and assume that the championship contenders are minding the track limits and minding their manners out there, because it can go wrong ever so quickly. And you actually reminded me of something just now. You never just see one car get a drive-through, do you? It is always a Jenga stack. It's always one car, and then the floodgates tend to open. So be on the lookout for that as the race does continue on. Nearly 5 p.m. in sim time here, and a lovely day in Barcelona for a race. I think you could all agree the sun's out and the race cars are going around, and it's been a fantastic affair so far, and we are not done. Where has the last hour gone? It's been absolutely brilliant. The 121 of Al Baladeo Caymans is still trying to make up spots, now trying to get the 12th place position from the 58. This battle just won't go away. Very patient driving, I've noticed, in this championship.
And that is what I like about it as well. A lot of the drivers, well, I would say actually all the drivers, Jesse, incredibly respectful of themselves and the cars around them as well. It's really, really good to see. And you're right, this battle with Nicholas Albadeo Camins for Odux Motorsport has been raging on for what feels like forever, with the number 58 just in front of him just now. And to be fair, you know, when you're in Nicholas Albadeo's Cameron's position, what more can you do? You're pushing the car as far as you safely can. The car in front is keeping a decent pace, You just have to keep going and do what you can. That's all you can do. But I'm pretty sure I saw the Lamborghini of David Pertil just a couple of seconds up the road, just going through that right-hander there.
I think you might have done. He's only about 4.5 seconds up the road is the 128. Now look at this camera on the in the grill of the 89 BMW Team BS Competition, the Angus Fender car. That is very much the 27 in front of him, and my goodness, it's a big old car, that BMW, enough to fit a camera in the grill, apparently.
It is big, but nothing will ever fill the hole in my heart that the M8 left for me. That was the ultimate big boy of GT racing.
You and me both. Oh, we
I
could
don't know
go
what I
on all
liked
day
more.
about that.
I don't know if it was the car or the memes that came out about that car that I enjoyed the most about it. Just every single time I think about that car, I think of the gloriously oversized Photoshop pictures of the car coming down the Kemmel Straight at Spa or at Le Mans or wherever. It's wonderful car. It's sad to be saying goodbye to the current iteration of the BMW. Moved on for the new generation that's just been ushered in, but the car's constantly evolving, and it is one of the nicer comebacks, I think, in Assetto Corsa Competizione. G2 Esports are another example of showing exactly what the BMW can do, Jesse, when you've got the right people behind the wheel and the right strategy on that car. Very, very quick, and great stuff to see. And of course, proving that in leaps and bounds with the fact that the 62 is up in third place.
And good for G2, good for them. Commentated some of their races in the past, and I gotta say they look impressive from the moment that they decided, well, we like sim racing, we're going to get involved in sim racing, and now they are a force to be reckoned with, just like they are in any other esport they compete in. It's absolutely brilliant to have them here and to see them succeed the way that they have, and especially today on the podium as well. And, keep in mind, it wasn't always like that. They had to fight for that spot, and they have. I don't mean to throw a damper on the parade, though, that Hits is only just behind them for that final podium spot, and not too far behind indeed are this group of McGregor and Huke, who continue to battle out as well. In fact, both of these drivers can see the impending battle for third in front of them.
And the thing with that is from what we've just seen, we know that could be a couple of seconds on a pit stop there. So it could easily change either way whatsoever. And the fact is that with the fact that we're at, an hour and 45 minutes into this 3-hour race, and we've still got 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th position separated by about 4 or 5 seconds, that is way too close for comfort. That is not close enough to even feel any sort of relaxation or comfort or confidence in that position at all. We've seen it all change very, very quickly, and we've all seen various different things happen as Angus Fender all over the back of Nicholas Hilbrand here, the number 94 Jazz HPD machine is under huge pressure here from Angus Fender in the BMW Team BS competition. But again, it's one thing being able to apply the pressure, it's another thing completely being able to make that move count. And at the moment, the two of them tripping it over each other, and you've got to think that might be allowing the 16th place car of Mikhail Kondratsioğlu in the 96 Aston Martin to close up with him as well. And the danger is with that is then the one Williams Esport of Dale McCormack could come into play as well. But again, this is for 15th position. This isn't a fight for 2nd, 3rd or 4th. And the pace is immense, and the fighting is absolutely immense as well. It's just such a wonderful championship to be involved in.
It's all very serious here. There's no follow the leader. There's no falling in line. The writing is on the wall, so to speak, for the 89. Fender is making it known that he wants to get by Hildebrand, but Kondratsioğlu now, who is wandering into the picture in the background in the very, what'd you call that, ultraviolet car, perhaps. And it's getting down to it where you're starting to, you're going to see teams that are going to be making some judgment calls. They're going to be making some moves. And I said in the pre-race as well, if you, especially in this sector 2, if you get side by side with somebody, if you get to racing somebody, you're not going to lose tenths, you're going to lose seconds a lap, and that is not something that this group has for the top 14. And I mean, you get side by side, then you get the 96 involved, and then you get McCormack involved as well, and that's how you get groups like this. Meanwhile, a move up in front of that group perhaps as well.
Wow, action all over left, right and centre. What I wasn't liking, however, is that number 27 the number 27 Ferrari lumped in the middle of that battle between Fender and Hillebrand, and that is actually the 27 of Kamil Pavlovsky, who is a lap down at least in that 27 Channel AC Esports Academy. Is a fast car, a fast driver, but unfortunately not in contention for the race, and starting to stick the nose in a little bit where it's not needed to be right now. Thankfully, backed off a little bit just now, but this is the problem, is that the two in front are tripping over themselves so much that it makes it very difficult for cars behind to think anything other than, well, look, I'm just going to try and make my way past here.
What are the blue flag rules here, David, by the way? Are they very strict, or are they sort of suggestions?
So the blue flags are to notify the driver. It's not like in F1 where the drivers have to pull off the racing line and let off the accelerator and let the car by. It's exactly the same as in real life. The cars are to notify the drivers that there's a faster car approaching. You are not to fight it, but you can keep your position. And if you ask any of the drivers that are doing the lapping, they prefer the driver in front staying on the racing line because they want the driver to be predictable and consistent, and so that they know they can just make a move and nothing's going to happen, like the driver's going to panic and drive straight into them. Because we've seen time and time again accidents happening under blue flag rules where the driver that's being lapped gets panicked, gets spooked, which is very understandable, and they unfortunately collide. So all that it means in the blue flags is to move over. Right, I've just had a 15 paragraph bit of blurb written to me in chat, and I've just seen that Angus Fender has got a drive-through penalty. Well, all I'm going to say is, if only you had a gifted commentator that would predict that at this time of the race, you can say that, I brought it on with the commentator's cars. All I'm going to say is it's my incredible gift that I saw that one coming.
Yeah, I'm sure the drivers wish you would share your gift a little less with them, but there you have it, folks. The first drive-through penalty. It's fair to assume for track limits, the 89 offender is in pit lane immediately straight away to serve that penalty, as McCormack gets very, very close to the back of Kundit Salglu in the 96. No contact there, but got all you like into turn one. Well, David, if that's the first drive-through penalty and we've got an hour and 7 minutes left to go, I don't need a crystal ball to tell you that won't be the last.
It really won't, but also the other thing you've got to remember is that we think of drive-throughs, Jesse, as like exceeding track limits or you just pushing too hard. But what that can also be is avoiding accidents. If you take to the grass or if you take to the runoff area, avoiding somebody else and keep the foot in, which, let's face it, a lot of these drivers tend to do. That can actually have an impact as well on your warnings. So it's all about risk management, isn't it? With an hour left to go. Look, if you've got something to fight for, absolutely. Who cares about track limits? Who cares about drive-through penalties? You absolutely go for it if the risk is worth the reward. But if not, if you're just fighting for Dare McCormack, that's not good. Kuntaxioglu, right, I'm going to decipher what happened there in this webcam at the bottom right. It looks like Kuntaxioglu was much slower out the corner, and McCormack just throws his hands up in absolute disgust, like, what on earth is happening here? Tried to get back on the power, and Kuntaxioglu there, like two cars coming out of one corner. I think it's just a misunderstanding.
I didn't know you could read lips, David, but he throws his hand up in frustration saying, what were you doing? Why did you not exit the corner? But an accidental contact there, the frustration setting in. They were nose to tail for quite some time before the contact, and now Well, the stewards have more work to do. Meanwhile, the battle for fifth does continue. That is the 22 Porsche right there as we take a look at the left rear wheel and rear fender of Ross McGregor for the 38 Jota McLaren. And these two have been inseparable, I think is the word I'm going to use, David. Inseparable for the most of the last hour. I wonder if maybe Chris Huke is a little tired of looking at the back of a McLaren.
Can you ever get tired of looking at the back of McLaren race-wise?
That's a good
obviously,
point.
You know, it's an enjoyable place to be. Maybe not from a race point of view, but yeah, they are certainly worse-looking cars out on that grid. That purple Aston Martin, for example. But
wow,
I mean,
okay.
I'm not a fan of garish liveries. They're to be fair, that one actually is fairly tame from what I've seen in my Assetto Corsa Competizione history. But going back to this one. Ross McGregor, he just has to keep it in. Here's the incident with Darren McCormack. So you can see Kantazioğlu. Well, look, actually, no. For me, that is 100% on Darren McCormack on that one, because Kantazioğlu was making his way through the corner. That was there was no reason for Dare to make that contact. There was no gap there that he could have gone for. Strange contact there.
Yeah, I think McGregor's argument here is going to be that he moved after he turned. He kept turning in to the left here and didn't give him space. But no, he never got to that point, mate. I'm sorry. I agree with you, David. He just got a bit overeager, I think, and drove in there and expected the car not to be there. And certainly when it was and didn't leave the corner, contact made. And we await what the stewards figure out with that, because that was significant contact there. Certainly you could argue it was avoidable.
It was unnecessary, I think, especially 2 hours into a 3-hour endurance race. I think it's silly-ish. I wouldn't go as far as saying silly. It's just an unfortunate. For me, that's a racing incident / penalty to Darren McCormack, but there was no maliciousness intended. I'll put it that way. This is Ross McGregor. Oh, and a bit of contact there from the car behind then. So no. There's your question on Chris Huke. Yes, he is getting fed up with that and decided to give him a little love tap for good intent.
Oh, yeah, there was a car on the outside yielding the line to the cars on a different lap, and then maybe Huke thought that he could make that move. Maybe he didn't mean to do that. He was just trying to clear the lap car so he could complete his turn one way or another. Contact there between the two of them, and a bit frustrating. Don't think there'll be too much damage, all told, as they all sort of reset back to nil, and they will continue their fight. Speaking of resetting to nil and continuing your fight, the 62 and the 4. I thought the 4 was catching shill, and Hits has done it now. Fully on the back. It is a race on for third place here with 1 hour. Again, one pit stop for all these teams left to go, but if you can make this pass right now, if Hits can do that, Benedict Hits, then maybe it doesn't matter what happens on the pit stop. You get out far enough in front, you never know.
Yeah, and this is some huge points here potentially for Haupt Racing Team Schindler in that 4th position just now. If they can get that 3rd position, believe it or not, they've only got 4 points in the entire championship just now, so this would be a monumental result for them. And I don't even think the 62 has any points on the board just now. So yeah, great job all round. And into the pits then goes Benedict Hits. So predictably, with 62 minutes left to go, now we're going to start seeing strategy come in, because we've got David Perella, Nicholas Hilbrand into the pits, Mikhail Nowakowski into the pits as well. So now we're going to see all change. This is the 15 minutes of chaos that we're going to see happening in front of our very eyes. This, for the last time this season, pit stops here at the GT World Challenge Europe Esports Championship by Fanatec.
I love that move by Benedict Hits there in the 4. They caught the car in front of, they caught the 62, the G2 Esports BMW, and immediately ducked down pit lane. That's about all that that was their strategy. That's what they had to do. It was either that or potentially be stuck behind them and lose time. Now you hopefully come out on a clear track where you can run your pace and maybe do the undercut on the 62. By the way, the 62 has, I think, about 25 points in the championship. I think they're 7th as they come in. And you're right about Haupt. They only scored points at the Nürburgring last time out, and that was 4 points. That was massive for them after spending the entire season out of the points. But looking for a lot more than 4 points today, maybe a podium. We'll have to see, as they're one of the first takers on pit road. McCormack brings the number 1 Aston to pit road. Kundexioglu also has brought the 96 Aston down pit road as well. The 33 AMG in the pit lane, and I think Probst has got into that car as well, as the 191 will be in sometime in the next 5 minutes. So everyone will have to be in the next 5 minutes or so. Mick Shins will have to get out of that car after a brilliant double stint. It must be said, I feel like we're almost underselling Racing Line at this point. They've done such a fantastic job. Chris Huque has decided that now is the time to get into pit lane and will pit out of his position, and so will the 62 of Schill. Interesting, they're not going right up until the stint limiter in this session or in this particular pit cycle. I wonder why that might be. Maybe they didn't want to chance it this late into the race.
I wonder if they're just trying to get it down so when the hour comes, they've got as little fuel in the car as possible. But confirmation there, an incident between cars 96 and 1 on lap 64. That was the Punterino from Darren McCormack that we saw there from the Williams Esports machine. And rather predictably, it's a drive-through to car 1 for avoidable contact. And, when I say that it's a silly move, you have to give it context, because you're not trying to imply that the driver is silly, but you're trying to say that that particular move just didn't need to happen. And the risk reward was unfathomably towards the risk side of it all going wrong and the one getting penalised. And when you look at how close this field is, that's almost certainly wiped them out of finishing in the top 20, I would say, given that Tariq Gamel into the car just now. It has huge implications for them.
Well, I've just been told as well, the 89 was given a warning for a pit lane infringement. So I wonder if maybe they came down pit lane after the lines divided, or maybe they jumped out of pit lane. One way or another, I'm assuming it was coming in, they have been given a warning for a pit lane infringement. So that is something they will have to pay attention to. And I guess they're lucky it was just a warning.
Well, I'm just thinking about this, and obviously massive respect for race control, but then it makes it almost irrelevant, doesn't it? Because it's very unlikely they're going to be coming into pit lane again. So it's a slap on the wrist that they'll not have to think about now for the rest of the race. They were one of the first to jump into the pits as Angus Fender back behind the wheel now, and it's done and dusted as we see Ross McGregor into the pits as well. Cracking little fight going on between Tariq Gamel and Andrea Miato as well for P14. So again, this is exactly what I was saying. This is a 15 minutes of chaos where all the cars are coming out, they're out of position, they're right up to cars that they're maybe fighting for position as well, and they're going to be wanting to make those early gains. So yeah, this is starting to get a little bit tense here, Jesse.
Tariq Gamel, by the way, has a drive-through penalty. I'm not going to assume that's for track limits, but I wouldn't be surprised. They're not necessarily focusing on that at the moment as they're trying to get the 58. Oh, yes. So that's the penalty from the teammate then that they're carrying, I'm being told.
Yeah. So it was just what we were explaining about the Punterino from Darren McCormack.
Oh, yes.
On Kundaxioglu. Unsurprisingly, that's what he's been given the drive-through penalty for. And if he does get a drive-through penalty for track limits now, I'm washing my hands of that one. I did not even mention that one. So what I've seen there is I've seen the bus and I've just thrown you under that one there, Jesse. But joking aside, like 2 hours into a 3-hour race, you said it earlier on, where's the time gone? And Robbie Stapleford with a 10-second penalty for, that is for a Zoom regulation infringement. Now, that's the whole thing if they have to have their cameras on, and that's of all the things for you to lose time on, that seems the one that's most within your control.
That is so strange. That is certainly something that you don't ever expect to hear or even have to deal with. But like you said, they have to have their cameras on for the benefit of the broadcast and other things. So it's just so strange, and you're left to wonder exactly how that has happened. Well, doesn't matter now. 10-second penalty to the 38, and that will put a big damper on their day. And considering they've already done their pit stop, they'll just probably add that on to the end of the race.
So I'm just keeping an eye on YouTube chat here, and the banter going on between the 62 team and the 4 team is absolutely hilarious right now, because the BMW team, the Mercedes team started off with, we're really happy with our position right now. We think we've done a good job. And the BMW team in front are saying, yes, we're also very happy with your position right now. It's just, yeah, I love that. What other championship would you get that sort of grade of banter going on? I think we're going to see maybe next season we're going to get penalties for banter in the chat. That could be a possibility for the next season of SRO.
You never have a football final where the two head coaches are going back and forth on Twitter, do you? You just don't have that. And certainly the teams...
That sounds amazing, just like a live fight on Twitter, on social media, just through the teams. That would be...
Oh, dear.
Yeah, I'd quite enjoy that. But I think that maybe Jesse says more than me about me rather than yourself.
I gotta say, I love I love racing in general, but sim racing, it exemplifies and amplifies that, where you have these teams. It's a tight-knit community, let's be completely honest. Everyone has the same sort of like-minded hobby, and they're all in it for basically the same reasons. They love to compete. On top of all of that, they get very competitive, but a lot of the teams, as serious as they take themselves, they allow themselves to have a little fun, and especially some of the representatives from the teams go at each other, and it's all just good banter, isn't it?
The silence should say everything. Yeah, sometimes it's banter, sometimes it's a little bit of banter masquerading some actual festering hatred. But in this case, I'm going to make an exception. No, like the teams at the 4 and the 62, they really do get on well, and that's the great context I think that it gives you, being able to like look at all these drivers and all these championships that they race, and you see them racing against each other week in, week out. And you're absolutely right when you say that it's a little community that they've got built up, and yes, they will be competitive, but again, it goes back to the point. A lot of these drivers switch from team to team to team throughout the season. So you'll find that one season they're with this team, the next season they're with a team that was thought to be, their sworn enemy. So it really does come down to what happens out on track. Everything else is just a fun little distraction to keep us amused while we're watching the final 50 minutes of this race.
Very fun stuff indeed, but maybe not. I didn't know if Giuseppe was going to get the 129 slowed down. The Red on Racing by Klosh, they finally, at the last possible second, got on the binders and stopped that car right before they went to the back of the 121. I thought that Audi of Albaldeo Caymans was going for a ride, but excellently judged by the 129 to not only not have that happen, but also make the corner. Excellent speed in there, but very close.
I've got to be honest, Jesse, I'm glad you said that, because I was like grabbing onto something here in my side of the commentary box. That looked a little bit too close for comfort by Giuseppe Giarratana for Raton Racing by Clash, but yeah, he obviously had the measure of it, but yeah, that was a little bit scary watching that going down there. 12th position, I think the 129 Raton Racing by Clash will be fairly happy with that. It's been a good showing from both of them. Egger down in the 130 in 20th position, so doing significantly better. But here come your race leaders, Jesse, into the pits. Marek Schinz and David Tanitsa in the pits at exactly the same time. And, well, this is starting to get very, very interesting indeed, because this is the final pit stops now, and they are already out. And, in fact, that must have been very, very close to the end of the pit stint, Towner.
Yeah, it sure was. They all had just about a minute, I think, when they initially came in, so they couldn't have done another lap. They timed that as close as they possibly could. Merrick Shins, it's going to be job done for him. A hearty pat on the back by the Racing Line Motorsports team, no doubt. Kevin Siclari in the 191 now. It is all for him to do. He's been afforded a 25-second lead, and it's up to him to bring it home. It might not be the championship win, but it could be 2 races in a row for the 191. It took very, very massive heroics in the 4th round of this championship for the 191 to see the top step of the podium. Well, it hasn't been anything like that today. They've controlled the entire race. On the right, of course, we have the 51 out of the pit lane now, and what can we expect from them? It is a big ask for them to make up 25 seconds, but I don't suspect they'll be too broken up about not winning today whenever they get the big cup at the end of this one.
And I think that's it. It's big picture thinking now as we head into the final hour of this final round of the GT World Challenge Europe Esports Championship by Fanatec here at Barcelona. It's David Christie and Jesse Lee taking you through all of the final action here from Barcelona. And what a race it has been. You're absolutely spot on when you say Giovanni Da Silva really won't be too fussed about second place. Great position to be finishing it anyway. Any other race of the season, it'd be a good haul of points, but today is very, very special for that Ferrari team, because if they stay on course right now, this is going to be the championship wrapped up on this last round. And yes, it's going to be gutting for Kevin Siclari and that 191 Racing Line Motorsport team, but there's that little bit of pride, that little bit of consolation, knowing that you threw everything that you possibly could, Jesse, at this title attack and at that attempt to try and take the championship right now. It's not over by any stretch of the imagination. We've seen numerous things happen in 10 minutes, let alone in 50 minutes. But again, both Siclari doing everything he can possibly do and Da Silva doing everything he needs to do for this championship.
There's something to be said about ending a series with momentum. It doesn't matter if you win the cup or not. It's momentum you take into the next series, into the next race. If you come back and run the next season of the series that you had a good finish in, that comes with you. And it's confidence, and as long as you're trending in the right direction, I've always said, then you're on to something. And both the 191 and the 51 have been. I would love to see them come back. I would love to see them have a head-to-head again. And I could guarantee you, I'd put money on it, that the outcome could and likely would be completely different had they all done this again. These teams have been very close. They've raced their hearts out here. And it's just been brilliant to watch all around as a spectator for me for the first 4 rounds. And today, insane for me. Be a part of the broadcast and to bring this thing home with you is just the icing on the cake, David. So I got to say, excellent job all around by the 51. They didn't have the starting spot that they would have liked. They needed to get it on the racetrack. They did, and since then has improved all the way up to second. Again, the 151 Shins and Siclari doing everything they can, but it hasn't come up yet that it has been the end-all, be-all punch at the end. Now, the question I have to ask, if the 51 were to get a drive-through for track limits, how far down the field would they fall?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think they would fall down to about 7th or 8th. I think it's about 25-30 seconds they'd lose going through pit lane, maybe slightly less, but certainly enough to drop them. That would destroy the championship. That would absolutely tip it in the favour of the 191 Racing Line Motorsport. The problem is as well is that, again, it comes down to, and we'll have to get our spies out or anybody watching the streams of the drivers to find out how track limits are doing. But in all honesty, I don't think from the looks of it, the 191 or the 51 have had anything to worry about in terms of track limits. They've looked absolutely consistent and solid for the remainder of this race. And we're seeing Artur Kammerer here back behind the wheel of that number 62 here, still holding on from Muller in the number 4 machine. But again, we saw the BMW dropping off towards the end of that stint as well. And the BMW is very, very strong after the first 5 laps. But again, if Luca Mueller can get past just now, this I think is the ideal time. But other than this, I think they're going to have to settle for that 4th position. And the question is, do you settle for that 4th position? Are you happy with it? It just looks like Lucas Mueller is content doing some very, very fast laps, getting as close to that 62 and taking that when the time is right.
Well, the short answer to that question, David, is absolutely not. If you're Haupt Racing Team Schindler, you want this podium. You want this vindication for your season. Of course, very little points Haupt Racing has, and a podium would be a cherry on top of a season that has been at times difficult for them. The 62, they've had a little bit of an easier road this season. They've been in the mix, in the conversation a lot, but the same cannot be said for Haupt Racing. So short answer for Lucas Mueller here is no, absolutely not. I want that podium.
Well, I guess that's me shot down then. But no, you're spot on. Oh, we've got a couple of penalties. Well, no, Stapleford one we knew about, but the 34 of Nerby gets a drive-through for track limits. So again, we're now starting to see just how hard these cars are starting to push, and Michel Nerby on the wrong side of those automated track limit warnings on that one. So yeah, Predator Sim Racing by RHG going to lose out some time and probably some track positions on that one as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's just going to keep happening. The 34 Porsche, Nerby will not be the last one to get the dreaded DT red marker by their team name here today, I'm afraid. And with 44 minutes left in the race, it is a long old way to the barn. And certainly somebody else will run afoul of that. You just hope it's nobody up fighting for a position or anything that would break up any of these excellent battles. Speaking of which, the 720 and the 80, we talked very early on in this race about the 80, about how good they did. Started completely dead last in this race, had a grid all to their own, or a row all to their own on the grid, I should say, and they ended up 18th. After about 15 minutes of racing, they've made it all the way up to 16th place, but is now Swederick in the 720 is hounding them here. Oh, and might have a run down the inside, but nope, covered well by the 80, and nothing doing there. Trying to go around the long way, you lunge into the corner on the outside. That's hard to make it stick. Losing grip there was the 720. Swederick went for it, but now still all over the back of the 80 Lamborghini.
Amazing action here towards the final 3/4 of an hour in this race, and Marcin Svederik for Carbon Sim Sport is letting him know that he is there and he wants that position, and Gijoli is really under pressure in that 80. It was an inspired start and drive from that number 80 machine, but the Carbon Sim Sport Blue is well and truly up to the challenge today. It's going to be a run down to the left-hander here. We've seen many issues from some of the cars. We saw the number 1 Williams Esports. It looked like a little bit of contact there, but the Lamborghini just gets going again, and you've got to think that Marcin Svederik is going to be a matter of time, because the pace that he's got in that 720 Carbon Sim Sport Blue McLaren looks very good indeed, and that Lamborghini looks very difficult. Looks like it's struggling on the track here, and just to say that, of course, the McLaren makes a mistake and loses about half a second.
Sometimes I wonder why we even say anything, David, because I feel like we're only a hindrance to the drivers some of the time. The 720 will make that up. They made up that gap once. They can do it again. Certainly they will get back in close contact with the Lamborghini in front, and that battle will commence once again. And what an excellent day and an excellent run from some of these cars that have started near the back and worked their way up to what I would consider a very respectable position considering the very stiff competition. But for everyone that has benefited, there's also a car that has faltered as well. And it's like I say sometimes, for every car that's excited for their finish, there's a couple of cars that are just waiting for the finish.
Well, I think one person that's waiting for the finish is Chris Hartfeld. He's just been in chat complaining that the track limits are absolute garbage. And you can understand why, because obviously his teammate Michel Nerby has that drive-through penalty. Completed it now and back out onto the track. But that drops him to 10th position, and that could have been a very different story. Svidrik has a look up the inside, dives onto the brakes. That is as easy as you like for Carbon Simsport Blue. Tries to get back on the throttle as well, but that is how you do it. The Lamborghini doesn't have an answer whatsoever, and Svidrik takes 16th position just now. Brilliant, brilliant stuff. This is back to the battle for 18th and 19th position. That is the 89 in front. BMW Team BS Plus competition of Attila Denks. And this is Tarek Gamel for Williams Esports. Again, we saw Williams Esports, Jesse, much higher up in the order, but now having to settle for 19th.
Yeah, they won't be happy about that, but they can do a little bit to help themselves. And, well, they've made their way into a battle with the 89 here, as finally back into the fray. Again, a lot of times it's like this. As long as you have somebody to race against, your mind is occupied and you're happy. You never want to be out there by yourself feeling like you're not racing for anything. Racing for 18th, for them, moral victory if they can get by the 89.
Just like the point that I raised earlier on, it almost doesn't matter what position you're fighting for. A fight is a fight, isn't Jesse? It's almost like your brain just switches into this attack mode where your only thing that you're thinking about is trying to make your way past that car in front. And you can see it on Tarek Gamel here. If you watch his face, if you watch his eyes, the places that he's looking at is places where he can attack. Where can he fire that car in a different position to the BMW? Where can he get the run? He's trying to get the run round this right-hander here. Takes a late apex, tries to pull the car in. And again, this is what I love about sim racing, especially competitions and championships like this, where you get to see the driver in real time as well, because the logic level, the deciphering level, and the active problem solving is second to none through these drivers right now. It is fascinating to watch, and it really adds a whole new dynamic to sim racing.
It certainly does. By the way, I was wondering what the blue flag was for. I thought they were by themselves. Well, that's second place, the 51 team in their Ferrari, and that is why they're being blue flagged, being let known that there is a car on a different lap approaching them. How does the 51 play this? I suspect they will try not to get involved unless they think they can clear both cars. And certainly appears like the 51 is trying to let them sort this out. And again, a around the outside move for Gamel in the 1. He has it stuck here, but he's going to run out of room just in time. And the 51 gets as close as you like to the back of the Aston without making contact. Trying to be as respectful as possible, David, but at some point, as a lead lap car, you have to get a move on.
You absolutely do, Jesse, and I want to know if you've got that same horrible, horrible feeling in the bottom of your stomach right now, watching all this unfold. This is not what we want to see with 37 minutes left to go, because Tarek Gamel, too focused on Attila Denks right now, doesn't realise that is the championship leader right in front of him, who is getting held up hand over fist. And what I want to know is how patient that second car of Giovanni De Salvo is, given we saw that incident on lap 1 where it was a little bit of aggression, and if I'm honest, a very, very fortunate turn of luck as De Salvo goes up the inside. Does the Aston Martin see it? Does, but still tries to keep the foot in. This is really, really nervy stuff here. So he's got past 1. Now De Salvo has to get past that BMW in front of Attila Denks, and it's a difficult one because obviously people are going to see this, they're going to think blue flags, but these two are fighting for position for themselves. The thing is that the BMW realistically now needs to just get out the way and let them pass, but the problem that the BMW has is that it can't do that. The BMW has superior straight line speed to the Ferrari, so it's going to be very, very difficult.
Well, that's about as much as you could have asked for. And look at that, the Ferrari through. So lap traffic cleared for your second place and championship leading team. And that is only going to bring these two back together. No longer a car in between them. And it is race on between Gamel and Dents in the 89 and the 1, as they will continue to try and outfox each other. And it is almost like a chess match at about 200 kilometers an hour.
And the chess match looks close to being resolved as we cut back to Robbie Stapleford and Nick Hubin. We'll catch that in a second, because this is still kicking off just now as Attila Denks in almost side by side with Tarek Gamel. This is the gift that just keeps on giving, with 35 minutes left to go in the race. And again, this is just, and I use this in air quotes, just for 17th and 18th place. This is not for a points paying position, but my goodness me, are they fighting like their lives depended on it.
Got to be in the top 10 to score points, but they are far down the order. No real chance of them unless something untoward happens up front. So this is their race. They're not racing for points. It doesn't matter. They're racing for pride here. They're racing to rep their particular teams, and getting loose there. You saw Camille in the 1 just about get sideways, walking the car, or walking the dog, as you sometimes hear people refer to it, struggling with grip off the corner, just trying to get traction, to get any extra out of the car to get down into, or get off of the turn in that case. Very close stuff. Battles all over the field as we near the 30-minute mark, 30 minutes left, 35 minutes left in this race, so to speak, at 5:33 p.m. in sim time here in Barcelona, Spain. And we have fantastic battles everywhere now.
We really, really do we? It's been such a privilege to be part of this and really enjoying the race that we've got so far. It's been a hotly contested one. Matteo Blotto here for Kessel Racing by Racing Line in the 192, trying to hunt down. That is the 286 just in front. I think that's Cameron Bridport, isn't it? For Team BUSR in 20th position. Great result for them, because if I remember rightly, Team BUSR were actually at the back of the grid. They were 26th position, so they've made a good couple of places on the race so far. So yeah, really happy to see that. One that I'm not happy about to see, though, is the 27 of Kamil Pavlovsky and Danilo Santoro for Journalistic Esports Academy down there in 23rd position. And we know that team, we know the pace that they've got. They have just not had any luck today whatsoever.
Yeah, of course, the John Lacey Esports Academy, they're 11th in the championship. They scored points in the first 2 rounds. The next 2 rounds haven't been too kind to them, and neither has Barcelona today. But like you said, the relative pace of that team, it is shocking to see them this far down the order for certain. They've had a rough go of it in that Ferrari today.
They absolutely have, and unfortunately it might not be over yet. With half an hour left to go, there's plenty more heartbreak in store for some of the drivers. Hopefully it'll just be a fairly calm affair and they can just get on with it, because what you want to see now is just drivers getting on with it and just ending out the season in a relatively drama-free way, if possible, because the majority of the racing has been done and dusted. You certainly don't want any incidents like that, like a BMW trying to sneak up the inside of a McLaren. No, that was a Lamborghini, excuse me. My eyes obviously failing me in old age there. But Tarek Gamel still fighting out with Attila Denks. And again, as I said, where possible, yeah, you obviously want to make up positions, but for the most part, with the gaps that are there, a lot of these drivers are going to be racing by themselves now. They're going to be on an empty spot on the track, and it's just a case of just seeing this one through.
It was frustrating for the 80 there, and everybody trying to make their way around them as they lost 2 spots to the 89 and the 1, who, by the way, are continuing their fight. They just dispatched the Lamborghini and continued their own fight, so they're all up net 1 spot, except, of course, the 80, who's lost 2 there, and now disappearing off in the distance is the 89 and the 1, who are Well, just about that close. I think you can fit a sheet of A4 in between them there.
Yeah, maybe on a good day, but yeah, look, it's fantastic to see that after all this time, they're still so close, and yeah. I think that we will get a resolution out of this because, as we said, how often have we seen the BMW is strong when it's in the midpoint of its stretch? But yeah, it's a difficult one nonetheless. And what I love as well, just going back to the YouTube chat as well, still the chat is raging on about that opening lap incident and. Looking at the drivers chat as well, and actually I've been watching some of the streams as well, and yeah, I've got to be honest, I don't think incidents like that will ever be resolved. I've got a personal opinion on it, but the fact is it's been resolved, so all that's left now is opinion and hearsay. And oh my god, Ben Kriener's got a drive through in the 94 in the Honda. That's going to be for track limits, and I'm absolutely devastated. Ben's a good friend of mine, and obviously just pushing the track limits a little bit too far there, and that is almost certainly going to drop him out of the 16th position. Maybe still stay in top 20.
Well, they were doing well in the Honda, it has to be said, but it is not to be today. Ben's going to have to bring his HPD Jazz Pro Europe car to the pit lane here in the next 3 laps. A lot of times a driver will just take it the first chance they get, and indeed that is the case this time for the 94. You got to feel for Ben. That team has been in the wars and in the fight all day around that 15th place position, and well, they're just going to be taken out of it, and sometimes it just isn't fair. I think you were mentioning earlier some of the drivers were commenting on how unfair some of the track limits are around here, and I mentioned that pre-race too, everybody, that the track limits here sneak up on you. There's certain turns you expect to get a track limit for and you don't. Then there's other turns that you expect a little bit of leeway and you don't quite have it. They don't want you to run wide because it is possible to gain an advantage while running wide, believe it or not. So there are a lot of those areas. You typically, when you familiarize yourself with a track for a race weekend, you end up making enough mistakes that you run wide and catch them all, so to speak. But I wonder if maybe on the pro level they don't do that. Maybe they don't run wide as much as a normal person does.
I think that's the key point as well, is that it's not just running wide, it's the avoiding other people. But again, it comes down to drivers as well, doesn't it? And the fact that how much they want to be liberal with the track limits. Personally, I like using as much of the tarmac as I possibly can, but I don't like going over the curbing or using any of the green strips. And unfortunately, to be fast consistently, sometimes that's the line you have to take. But like this corner here, there's a very fine line between pushing the very last tenth of a second out of the car and getting yourself a drive-through penalty. And what I'm going to say is probably going to be quite controversial, but when you're down in, say, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th position, why do you need to be taking that risk? Why do you need to be pushing it that hard? Fair enough if you've got a car in front of you that you're trying to get, but even then, is that 16th position so important for you that you're willing to risk going all the way down to 20th to 21st position? I don't understand it sometimes, and this is a huge move around the outside of turn 1 for Tarek Gamel, and the BMW now on a massive back heel here. Attila Denk's having to do some massive defensive driving here, and that Aston Martin looking very, very strong indeed. It's definitely got the wind underneath its wings, and is this going to be a move to the outside around the BMW? You are kidding me. That is never in a month of Sundays going to work, because Attila Denk has to force him wide, but he's going to have the inside line surely, and the Aston Martin comes through. The BMW's having none of it. They're two side by side, incredibly respectful racing. He's done it. The Aston Martin of Williams Esports and Tarek Gamel finally makes the move stick. Attila Denk's firmly in his rear view mirror. 27 minutes left to go. That is a masterclass in overtaking, and from the two of them in respectful fighting.
Williams Esports gets it done, gets the pass done, and I was looking at Tarek's face the entire time there. His expression didn't change. Normally you raise an eyebrow, you maybe fist bump or something after a pass like that. Nope, nose to the grindstone for Tarek. Has more things to do. And, we'll try to get that gap back into Swederick in front. It's a big ask in 26 minutes, that 12 seconds, but you just never can tell. Well, meanwhile, up front, Kevin Siclari, who took over the car at the last pit stop, has had absolute clean sailing and is all by themselves for the moment on the racetrack. And it has been a picture-perfect day for them. The car, not a single mark on it. They put it up front, and they have stayed up front. The Racing Line Motorsport team needed to beat the 51 Ferrari team by more than 12 points to win this championship today, and it doesn't look like that's going to happen. The 51 in second place. They didn't always start there, but even still, the 191 presses on. Racing Line has a 28. Nearest makes no difference. 29 second lead on DeSalvo and the 51 behind them. And we've talked all race long about what a championship would mean to both these teams, what it means if they don't win the championship. For the 51, David, this has got to be sweet to know that over 5 endurance rounds, including some very long, arduous races, they were the best team.
I've got to be honest, I think they'll be breathing a huge sigh of relief after Nürburgring, after that disastrous performance there, where they scored absolutely 0 points from that round. And really, it was all in the effort of the 191 of Racing Line Motorsport for that. So, yeah, I think they'll be very happy. Instead, between cars 58 and 27 on lap 81, no further action, so that's been determined to be a racing incident. But just on that point, after that last round out at Nürburgring, yeah, I think they're going to be delighted to be back on form. We saw last night David Tanita was absolutely back on it, and this is just proof that on a good day, these two really do rise to the top. All credit, though, to the 191 Racing Line Motorsport of Kevin Siclari and Marek Schintz, but unfortunately, today just wasn't enough. It all rested on those opening couple of rounds. That's where they needed to get the extra points.
Well, it's going to look very close in the final championship standings. I can assure you that if everything holds here for the final 24 minutes. But before we hand out the hardware, we better make sure that everyone gets to the checkered flag. It is all so volatile, this situation we find ourselves in. 24 minutes to crown a champion, and it will be, for the likes of the 51 bunch at least, the longest 24 minutes of their entire season.
It really is going to be, and it all rests on that man's shoulders, Giovanni DeSalvo, for the remaining 24 minutes of this race here at Barcelona. Obviously, when we started this broadcast, Jesse, we had our ideas about what was going to happen, but I don't think we could have dreamed for the amount of action and intensity we had in this final race.
Can I just say, David, you absolutely nailed it as well. Before we went live this evening, David was telling me that he expected DeSalvo and the 51 team that they were going to rise through the ranks based on what they had seen. And I was a bit apprehensive to agree because of what happened at the Nürburgring, and it is such a volatile situation. And I was interested in what the likes of some of the other teams were going to be doing as well. And when I saw that car backwards at the end of the front straightaway, my heart stopped for a moment until I saw the 51 was already clear of that incident. But I have to say, David, you absolutely nailed that whole thing, and that's an excellent prediction. I don't know if you have a lottery, but you might be interested in playing it now.
Well, at least it's the whole thing of a slow clock being right at least twice a day. I just say a lot of things in the hope that some of them, Jesse, are occasionally right. No, but again, that's just drawing on the fact I've been incredibly privileged to see all of these drivers time and time again. You know the teams, you know the drivers, you know what to expect from the way that they behave and the way that they perform, and it's the only way that it comes through. And even then, there's some of the performances today that I've been a little bit surprised by. disappointed in performances and really delighted in the performances as well in some of the drivers, like the HPD Pro Yaz team as well. Ben Kriener in the 94 and Patterson in the 93. I'm delighted to see them getting a solid result for that as well. So just having a look at the standings, as it were, that our production team have posted. And I'm always very, very cautious about provisional results and provisional standings and things like that. I actually made a real doozy of a mistake when I was doing motorbike commentary in real life, and predicted or announced the winner of a championship before realising that they actually still had one more round at another circuit that I had no idea of before. And they weren't best impressed at getting their hopes up. But again, the provisional scoring, that gap is 5 points between FDA Esports team and Racing Line Motorsport as it stands on track at the moment. And we keep saying we wonder about how the 191 Racing Line Motorsport team feel at that. I think to be within 5 points of that, you've got to take some credit away from that, and being the pair of you being head and shoulders above nearly all the other teams.
Well, coming into today, there were only 2 teams that had scored points in every round of competition this season. And surprisingly, the 51s that looked like champion-elect here weren't on that list. And there's something to be said about consistency. There's something to be said about being present and maximizing each race. And, the way that it went is they didn't have to, or at least to this point, the 51 hasn't had to score points in every round. If they would have, we would have been having a very different conversation all day long, but it did go the way that it did. And again, just a handful of points. I think you said 5 points as they run is the difference in the championship, and that would be good enough for the Ferrari 51 team. It's incredible. This whole championship has kept me on my tippy toes, and I watched that entire Nürburgring race with my mouth open for one, the turn 1 melee, and then of course the meteoric rise of the 191, wondering how in the world they pulled that off to even be in this situation, to be a part of this conversation. It was incredible. This whole series, though, has been full of surprises.
Yeah, it really, really has. As we see Ben Kriener there in the number 94 HPD Yaz Pro Europe machine in the Honda, the 94. There's been so many stories that have unfolded over the entire season here for GT World Challenge Europe Esports Championship by Fnatic. It's just been such a wonderful thing, and for me as well, like yourself, I got brought in as a commentator towards the end of the season, so I got to watch all the exciting stuff, as like all hell was kicking off at the likes of Nürburgring, and to see it out like this has just been, like I say, such a privilege. And seeing these drivers out there, they've really, for the most part, again, we've had a couple of incidents which are like, you put your heads in your hands, but the thing I always say at this, it makes me so proud to be involved in esports, watching the final 18 minutes of a race here and seeing everything that these teams and drivers have achieved over the season, the battles, the fights, the victories, the losses. Everybody's been in this together, and they've all pulled themselves through with enormous dignity and enormous respect. So every single one of these teams, every single one of these drivers can leave this championship head held high, regroup, rethink about things, and attack it again next year.
You pretty much summed up everything I was going to say. My sentiment indeed is the same, and it just I said at the beginning of the broadcast that the future of sim racing is very bright, with all the young people that are interested in motorsport. They're interested in sim racing, the advancement of technology, the advancement of broadcasting, and everything that we can do now. And it just gets better. Every championship, every series, the competition gets tighter. The The experience is better, and you couldn't ask for anything more. By the way, I was looking at Tarek Gamble here in the 1. I expected them to leave the 89, but they really haven't. They've been hanging around. It's only 1.5 seconds the gap, and it's been, what do you reckon, the better part of 10-ish minutes since that pass has occurred, and they haven't really left the 89 at the pace that the 1 caught them and then made short work of them eventually. I expected there to be a gap, and there isn't one. There's an even smaller one here between Swederick and the 58, as, still looking twitchy are the McLarens on the curbs, but a very tight race here, this being the battle for 14th place.
Yeah, it really is. 14th and 15th, Andrea Miato against Marcin Swidericz for Carbon Sim Sport. And while they're duking it out, I'm going to bring your attention to something that I find absolutely outrageous and ridiculous. Kevin Ciclari is still doing 143s. He did a 143.899 that last lap round. He's very close to coming up to some traffic, but every single other driver on the field right now is doing 144s or 145s. To do a 143 with 15 minutes left to go, when you're already 32 seconds up in the lead, that is just stamping your authority on the race. It has been a dominant performance from the 191. And it's fantastic to see. But back to this battle then, and I don't know. I think the McLaren's looking very, very tasty, but we know the McLaren drops off quite quickly in terms of tyre pace towards the end of the stretch. And also on your question about Tarek Gamble, he did get past the BMW very quickly, but the problem is that where does he go after that? He's got 10 seconds to catch up to the car in front. So he's got the pace to get past the BMW, but unfortunately, that's about it. You're kind of left in that position over the final 15 minutes of this final race of the season.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the gap's coming down for Tarek in the 1. It's now 9.8, but as I surmised earlier, it's just going to run out of time unless something very massive happens. Miato here continuing to try and keep Swederick behind them. The battle for the 14th place position continuing here, and what a treat here near the end of the race. And 2 British marquees, 2 very different cars, mind you, at that as well. And you suspect the drivers would be a bit worn out by now, but now it's time to get those final positions and do the last bit of the heavy lifting. No pass attempt on this occasion. Not close enough with Swederick that time. As continuing, Miato, you got to give it credit to the 58. They've done a pretty darn good job in the GCWR Academy team car, and they're right now keeping the 720 behind them.
Yeah, this is now where you're going to be able to make your moves. It's now a case of it's now or never. So yeah, interesting to see as we see Swidericz on the tail end of Andrea Miato. But yeah, it's going to be a difficult one for a number of reasons, because it's that risk-reward factor that I was telling you about earlier on, Jesse, is the fact that for Swidericz, is the risk of trying to make that move up into 14th enough to justify the potential for an accident that could take them out of the top 20, or is it just a case of they just push Andrea Miato until Andrea potentially makes a mistake here? With 30 minutes to go, I would think that the latter is going to be the option that they choose.
The short answer is yeah. You go for it. It's the end of the season. It doesn't matter. But the long answer is, wait a minute, you're probably going to have to race that team later. Maybe you don't do anything to upset them. Just because this is the end of this championship doesn't mean that they're not racing in another.
Miato's just got drive-through for going wide. He just went wide on that right-hand corner, and Andrea Miato has signed his own fate by getting a drive-through. So there we go. Swidericz has done everything that he needed to do. Put the pressure on Miato. Miato makes a mistake and gets a drive-through penalty.
Well, there you have it. You do that, and then it doesn't matter about making anybody mad. They're mad at themselves at that point. A little bit of mirror driving, it can do that to you, David. You can't look too much in that mirror. You lose your concentration out front. You lose your entry point or where you need to apex maybe, or maybe you just try to pull a little too much off the corner and end up running a bit wide understeering. Well, things like that do happen all the time, and I'm not going to speculate that's what happened on that particular occasion, but certainly a mistake under pressure has yielded the 14th place position to Swederick in the 720, and that's just about as easy as you can make that pass. I don't know if the 58 gave up on that or not, but maybe they just ran wide enough that it broke their momentum either way. 720 through into the 14th place position.
Yeah, it's desperately unfortunate to have that happen, and all Miato now can do is try and consolidate whatever position they can actually get after that drive-through penalty. To get one 11 minutes from the end, Jesse, is an absolute gut punch for the team and for the drivers involved as well. It can happen to any single driver on this team, and I've got a feeling it's not going to be the last drive-through penalty we're going to see in this last 11 minutes of this race. We're now into the absolute unknowns. Anything that we think we know about this final 10 minutes of the race can go right out the window, because there's so many unforeseen variables that are at play behind the scenes here. All we do know is that 10 minutes left to go. Kevin Siclari still in a huge position there in the 191 up front and in the lead of the race as we hit 96 laps done and dusted here at Barcelona. Second place then is Giovanni De Salvo in the 51 FDA Esports team car, and then Artur Kammerer in third place in the 62 BMW Sim G2 Esports machine. It's Lucas Mueller in fourth position in that Haupt Racing Team Schindler Mercedes. Robbie Stapleford is in the Team Jota car in fifth position in 38. Now, looking at the times that he's putting in just now, I think he's going to lose that fifth place to Samir Ibrahim, but I think that's all he's going to lose, because Nick Cuban is about 18 seconds behind him right now. Samir Ibrahim, as I said, is in sixth place just now in the GPX Racing by Renville and Porsche, and then it's Nick Cuban in the 157 car just behind them as well, the St. Lock by R8G machine that he is sharing with Giorgio Simorini. And then it is Michel Nerby in the 34. That's the other Predator Sim Racing by R8G machine. And then in 10th position is Thibaut Prost in the 33 ACA ASP by GTWR Mercedes outfit. 10 minutes left to go. Wow. Jesse, where has the past 2 hours and 50 minutes gone?
I don't know. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's just gone by so fast. We've always had something to talk about. There's always been positions under fire, and I'm not too sure if Probst is safe in the 10th place position for that final point. Baladeo Caymans is coming up very quickly indeed to maybe take that position away. So not done yet inside the top 10. You were talking about track limits earlier as we saw another driver take a drive-through penalty in the middle of a fight. I think if you're not fighting for anything right now, you're telling your driver, stay inside the white lines at all times. I don't care if you give up time, stay inside the lines. Don't hit too much curb. Don't fight anybody. Just keep it on the island. And if you are fighting somebody, you tell them the same thing, except, maybe get that position away from them. It's the catch-22. Go get them, but be safe about it, and save me a little fuel, but go get that guy in front. It's that old adage.
I've got to be honest, I love what Lucas Mueller did there. Just lets Robbie Stapleford take the position. It's kind of patronising in a way. It's like him patting him on the head and going, yeah, you take that fourth position, because he knows it's absolutely meaningless, because he's got a 10-second penalty after the race is done. So yeah, that's real intelligent play there from Lucas Mueller. Lets that McLaren through. It means absolutely nothing. They're going to lose the place anyway, and it might give him a little toe as well. So yeah, great stuff to see. And the thing is that Robbie Stapleford almost certainly will lose that fourth position, fifth position, and he'll be down into to sixth position. But 7.5 minutes left to go in this final round of the GT World Challenge Europe Esports Championship by Fanatec, and it's obviously a time to say thank you to our amazing commercial partners who have really been instrumental in giving us a season to absolutely behold and enjoy, to Fanatec, to AWS, to Pirelli, to Kunos as well, who we simply wouldn't be here if it wasn't for, to the team at AK Esports, to the team at the SimGrid, to SRO Motorsports Group, and to SRO Esports as well. And every single member involved, I think it's safe to say, Jesse, we can all really feel proud of what has happened this season. It has just been an absolute banger this season.
Yeah, I just want to add on, David, I definitely appreciate all the partners here that make this race and all the races possible, and it's an absolute treat to be here, a privilege and an honor as well. So thank all the crew that are involved as well, and been treated all season, like you said, to fantastic racing. It came to a head today. We knew somebody was going to be crowned champion. We didn't have a clue who it was. There were 3 teams that could mathematically win this championship. There were 2 teams that had a realistic shot, and there were some ups and downs, and barring some very late race drama here, it is almost time to pop some corks off and relax just a little bit. And for the top 2 teams in the championship, my final word on that is very simple. It doesn't matter if you are the 51 Ferrari or the 191 Bentley. You both have things to be incredibly proud about in the dying embers of this championship, and I think that's what they'll remember the most. But something special about to happen here in 5.5 minutes for the 51 Ferrari. If they can hang on to this and not get that dreaded red DT by their name, which I don't think they're in any danger of doing, it's going to be something special. There's nothing like being a world champion. There's nothing like being a champion in the pinnacle of esports for anything, is there? It's a once in a lifetime for most people, and I can only imagine what they must be feeling like.
Well, I can imagine they've had worse Saturdays for sure, but you're absolutely spot on when you said about the 191 of Kevin Sinclair Racing Line Motorsport. They're going to be frustrated and disappointed that they didn't take the championship, but delighted with the performance that they had today. This has been almost a boot on the throat of the entire field right now in terms of the dominance that the 191 team have had today. To be 100 laps in and 30 seconds in the lead, that is a marker for anyone, and one that no championship win will be able to take away from them, and finishing second in the championship. But realistically, it's all about Giovanni De Salvo right now with 4.5 minutes left to go. They've kept it clean, they've kept it out of harm's way, which is more than they could at Nürburgring. We came into this round with that wobble, knowing that they really were on a knife edge. If they fell one way or the other, they have the patience, they have the pace, and they have the performance in that team to make it a very strong and decisive championship win. But it's whether they got the rub of the green, and they did get that today. And ironically, I'm actually really happy with the way that that's panned out, because the pair of them, you made an analogy earlier on, Jesse, about a boxing match, and this is exactly what it's like. It's like watching 2 heavyweights go at it for 12 rounds, and the pair of them are still on their feet. And yes, you're going to have a winner, but the 2 of them can absolutely hold their heads up and really know that they gave it everything they possibly could, but still giving it everything with 3.5 minutes. This is a battle for P10. That is Thibaut Prost, and that, I believe, is the 1-2-1 of Nicolas Albadeo Kamins. Now, remember, Kamins, if I'm recalling this correctly, is actually in VR, so he's going to be very tired right now, but absolutely buzzing and absolutely focused on taking this final spot in the top 10 from Thibaut Prost. The 2 of them duking it out, and if ever you wanted proof that everyone's fighting it all the way to the end, this is exactly it. And Thibaut Prost goes wide out of that left-hander here, leaves himself very vulnerable to Albadeo Kamins, who is desperate to jump into that top 10 position here. But 2 3/4 minutes left to go. This is starting to get a little bit fiery between these 2.
Did you see how far over Probst was there going into the sharp left-hander at the end of the straightaway? He was all the way into the clag, into the marbles over there, and he's done the same thing here on the front straightaway. The 33 not giving the 121 any room to make an inside move. It's going to have to be an outside move for the 121 Audi, and it's going to be contact there going into turn one. Not giving up is the 33, but not giving up either is the 121. Something has to give here with just about 2 laps to go.
And here was me saying everyone was going to be quite contented with their position. Not so much as going to be deep onto the brakes then for the 121 of Albadeo Cummins, but can't make anything stick right now. And that McLaren that is just behind them, I would be very happy if they just stayed out of the way right now, because this is a little bit fiery and a little bit feisty. The last thing that we need is a lapped car getting involved and deciding to make hay while the sun shines here. But Thibaut Prost absolutely holding on to this one against Nicholas Albadeo Cummins right now. The 121 chasing down the 33. But 1 minute 20 left to go. We're very close to starting the final lap here. And there we go, up the inside. And I'm going to presume that was netcode and not a hardware failure for that car in front. There it is. There we go. I did presume right. I just held it from the way that Mercedes disappeared off the screen there. And I think that the Audi knew that as well. And the problem with that is that connection issues could hand that position back to the Audi, and the Mercedes might not actually have anything to fight for.
Yeah, you don't know. It's hard to race somebody that you cannot see, and that car is gone, David. The 33 is no longer in this race. That position has now been surrendered to Albadeo Cummins in the 121. That's not how you wanted it to end, but on a day that was as shocking as ever, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. So more fun and frivolity right off to the very last of the race, but it all matters not, because it's all about this man here and this team here, Kevin Seclari. They gave it everything they could. They knew what they had to do in that 191 to bring the championship to the door, to the fight. They are on the last lap just now. They've only got about 8 corners left to go in this race. It's been a dominating performance from Kevin Seclari and his teammate Marek Schintz in the 191. They took pole. It's been a light to flag performance from them, but ironically it's not going to be enough, because the 51 of Giovanni De Salvo and David Tinitza, as it stands, are going to be your 2021 GT World Challenge Europe Esports champions by Fanatec. And what a race this has been. Round the final couple of corners then for Kevin Seclari, down into the chicane for the final time, and then round that long sweeping right-hander at New Holland for the final time. It's been a glorious run for the pair of them. They will be absolutely delighted. It's a bittersweet victory. Round the final corner as Racing Line Motorsport take the win. Kevin Seclari across the line, but it's going to move very quickly, and attention turns to Giovanni De Salvo for the FDA Esports team round the final corner very, very shortly, and they are going to be across the line and absolutely delighted with this as they go through the chicane. Couple of cars in the back, but oh my goodness me, if you'd asked me a couple of weeks ago in Nürburgring if they could do this, no, I wouldn't have thought so. But your 2021 champions are FDA Esports team. Giovanni De Salvo and David Tinitza take the title, and they are going to be absolutely thrilled, Jesse.
They may be thrilled, but they're not acting like it. They're calm and cool and collected, just exactly how you would expect the FDA Esports team to react. It was never in doubt for them, and I don't think they're even sweating, David, at all. But brilliant job. They are the endurance champions of Europe. Excellent job. And of course, Kammerer does come across the line and finish third in this race today. An excellent result for G2. Stapleford will come across the line in fourth place, but they will not be able to keep it, I'm pretty sure. And What a fantastic finish. 5 points in the championship in today. And what an excellent race it was. Battles in the top 10 right down to the last. That's how you want a finale to be.
Yeah, we were absolutely spoiled with all of the race and action that we had there. The 191, they can absolutely leave this championship with their heads held high. A brilliant race win for Kevin Siclari and Marek Schintz there. We'll speak to them in just a second. We'll also speak to your new 2021 GT World Challenge Europe Esports Championship champions, of course, the FDA Esports team. What a drive from them. From Giovanni and from David as well. Really, really happy with how that went down. And congratulations to all of the teams and drivers taking part in this year's championship. It really has been a high level of esports standards that we've seen from all of the races. Yes, we've had lots to talk about, but if anything, for you guys watching at home, it's given us plenty up here in the commentary box to talk about. Jesse, I mean, that 3 hours has just gone by in the blink of an eye. It all started before the first corner, and really you've got to say, in my opinion, the FDA esports team very, very lucky to get away with that one.
Yeah, they certainly were. It was almost like flashbacks from the last round, but the 51 does get through. FDA ends up getting space, and then of course, the stewards decided that, nope, that's a racing incident, and race on was the call, and race on they did, all the way up to second place and to a championship win. Incredible stuff for them. And for the 191, again, you can't look at what might have been, just 5 points shy of being the champions themselves, and very worthy competition. I look forward to seeing those two teams, FDA and Racing Line, racing each other again. And you can mark my words, this won't be the last championship that goes down between the two of them.
Absolutely. So as we wait for the drivers to head into the interview booth, I'm just thinking about that as well, about that lap one incident. And what I don't want is for that to overshadow what an amazing drive that was for FDA Esports Academy, because that was a championship worthy drive to get themselves up into to that second place. So while we've got that, then it looks like we've got our two teams in. So first off, then let's have a word with our winning drivers then, and that is of course going to be Kevin Siclari and Marek Schintz. So let's bring them into the virtual commentary booth. But a huge congratulations, Kevin Siclari, Marek Schintz for Racing Line Motorsport. A dominant performance today. You must be absolutely delighted with that win.
Yes, thank you.
Let's go, Marek. Don't stop yet, because you deserve it. So
yeah, it's a great achievement to win here with such a dominant performance as well. Like, it wasn't easy, really. It was very hard to set up the car on this track, to be honest, to make it consistent as well, because tire wear was a big factor. But yeah, we managed to do it pretty well.
Now, talk us through that opening lap, because obviously in your mirrors, did you see any of the chaos that unfolded? And were you, like I'm thinking, were you just like, yep, thanks, you guys just fight among yourselves?
I didn't actually see it in my mirrors because I was pretty focused on Robbie to not get past me, so I covered the inside. And then after a few corners, Kevin told me behind me was a public lobby start, and I already knew what was going on.
Wow, that's high praise right there. Goodness me. But on a serious note, the two of you displayed a level of consistency and a performance that really, I think, yous have been threatening all through the season. Is there any part of you as a team that looks to the earlier performances and think, well, what if we could have done that differently?
Do you want to, Kevin, or should I?
yeah, no, we drive Bentley on the past, and we already know a bit the car. We like the interways. On first race, we had such a not a good bot. But last free race, it's a long championship, so it's championship BOP. And last free race, the BOP was good, and we managed to do a really, really, really good job on the car, especially Marek and Fabrizio last race worked very hard on it, so thanks them for really hard work. And I think we do everything perfect on the championship, so we don't have regrets. I'm really happy about results. It's still a bit of shame, but Ferrari deserve it. So second place is it's a really great result for us, and let's see next year what we can do.
So the important question I have for you, firstly, obviously, second place in the field that is there is absolutely insane. The driver lineup is like the who's who of Assetto Corsa Competizione. So you both must be absolutely thrilled. And from my point of view, having watched you guys driving and improving, it's such a privilege to see that. But more importantly, Marek and Kevin, who is buying the beers tonight?
It's a bit difficult because Kevin obviously lives in France and me in Germany. But we'll make something out, I'm sure.
Yeah, we go to drink somewhere.
Good stuff, guys. Well, congratulations on second place in the championship, but even more so, congratulations on an absolutely dominant win here at Barcelona, and we cannot wait to see you guys coming back for next season.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, really.
So there we go, Jesse. That was Kevin Siclari and Marek Jensen. A little bit of emotion, and they were actually delighted about that result.
They were, but I like what they said right there at the end. Did you catch it, David? We will be back.
Absolutely, and that was an absolute given with the performance that they had. But we have got then our second place in the race, and more importantly, your 2021 GT World Challenge Europe Esports Championship by Fanatec champions. Good afternoon, good evening to David Tinitza, Giovanni De Salvo. That has a nice ring to it, doesn't it, gents?
Yeah,
Hi, guys.
good evening. Ciao.
So, Giovanni, we'll come to you first because you had the first stint in the car. Firstly, congratulations on the championship win, an amazing season. And given what happened at Nürburgring, we'll start with there actually. Did you realistically come into today after Nürburgring thinking, can we actually do this?
Yeah, for sure. We had, I think, 12 points on the second car. So I think we only had to do a good race and get minimum podium to do it, and consider all the race except Nürburgring, obviously, of the season. We always had a podium, P1 on Monza, P2 on Porticar, and P1 as well on Spa. I was pretty confident to do the podium also today, but you never know how a race goes, so was not really sure, but yeah, I was confident about that.
Well, obviously the huge talking point from everyone, from ourselves here in the commentary booth and on chat as well, is that turn, that lap one incident. Just talk us through the start of the race from your point of view.
Yeah, I'm really sorry for what happened. For sure, it wasn't meant to do it, but I was covering the right part of the track from the Mercedes behind. That was really, really fast. I was defending the position, and I was trying to stay as much close as possible to the McLaren, not to be overtaken. But we were so much close that when he turned a little to the left, we had a contact, and he spun on the main straight. So I'm sorry for that, but I had the steering wheel centered, so nothing to do about it. But yeah.
I was just about to say, obviously decided by the stewards that it was a racing incident. On a personal note, how easy do you find to just ignore incidents like that, to leave it to the back of your head, or do you worry then for the next couple of laps that maybe there's going to be a drive-through, or do you just focus on the actual race in front of you?
Yeah, for sure. The first 2 or 3 laps, I was a bit confused because I was thinking about the incident and so on. But then I just said, okay, if we got the penalty, I think it's almost finished. But if we don't have it, we can do it. So I just focus on my driving and nothing.
And obviously after that, it was one hell of a charge that you put on to hand over the car to David in the best possible position. So Giovanni, we'll come back to you in just a second, but David, coming on to yourself, obviously you took over the car from Giovanni in a great position. The car had a lot of pace and a lot of momentum. How did the car feel for you when you got on it? What was your main objectives?
Yeah, I was pretty confident in my stint. Of course, Giovanni did a really great job in the first one, and when I jumped into the car, I was feeling really great with the setup. One thing to mention is that the setup was made completely by Giovanni, so I really like how he does the setup. My driving style was suiting that setup perfectly. So I had also the car in a really great track position, so I just had to keep a really consistent pace until the last stint, and that's what I did. So at the end of the stint, I left the car to Giovanni and we completed the job.
And that brings, Giovanni, you perfectly back into that one. I want to get an idea of your emotion on that last 5 minutes of the race as it's starting to come real that you are going to take the championship, and you finally crossed that line. What was the thoughts going through your head?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's for me, right?
Yeah.
Or for David? Okay. In an endurance race, it's not like on a sprint race because you have much time to know what is happening. So was not the last 5 minutes, but I think the last 30 minutes. I think so. It's more easy. It's not a bottom to top. Emotional changing, but yeah, for sure is really great to achieve this result, and GG to all the competitors. The Bentley today did a really great job to win the race and keep the championship on a really close fight, and congrats also to all the other teams that joined this championship.
David, just quickly, one other question that I wanted to get across, and Giovanni, you'll be able to help me out on this as well, is that for our viewers at home, I always don't think that they have any idea of the amount of work that drivers like yourselves put into for these championships and for these races. And can you give them a little idea of just how much work and how much preparation that you guys go into?
Yeah, there's a lot of effort into this. For example, in our team, we basically train at least 4 hours per day. In this case, Giovanni is the only one doing all the ACC, so every single day he does 4 hours of training. So he needs to develop the setup, try dry conditions, wet conditions, develop a setup also for the wet conditions. And of course, when we come into the race, like for example an endurance race like this one, we got to do 3 stints, so we need to prepare the tire pressures for every single stint, and also tire pressure for wet conditions. So there's a lot of work to do, and lot of times we have 3 weeks to prepare a race, and it's still not enough. So of course, from our side, we try to do the best in our training session and to optimize everything. But yeah, it happens that sometimes we don't have time enough for it.
Well, guys, the last thing then to ask is how much does that title mean to you? How much does the winning the SRO GT World Challenge Europe Esports Championship by Fanatec mean to the FDA team, and more importantly to David Tinizza and Giovanni De Salvo?
Well, if you want to go first, Joe.
Okay. Now, for me, it's a really great achievement. It's a championship with you can see from the name of the drivers of the team that were participating in this championship is really high level. So winning this competition is really, really, really good.
And it means a lot also to me because, you know, this was also my first ever GT Championship won. And doing it with this amazing team is something special. Also, I would like to mention also the job from behind the scenes. Of course, me and Giovanni were the drivers today, but I need to mention also Amos that helped us to win the 24-hour of Spa and also racing in Nürburgring. And of course, the really amazing help from Stefan, our coach, who every time prepares our training sessions and it's always there supporting us during the race and not only that. So really great effort from all of us, and I'm really happy and glad to share this amazing result with them.
Thank you for giving that big shout out to everyone involved behind the scenes. Obviously, it's so many people involved with that, and thank you for giving us an insight there into how much that means to you guys. But congratulations once again then to David Tinitza and to Giovanni De Salvo. Enjoy your weekend and enjoy your celebrations, gents.
Thank you, guys. Ciao, ciao.
Wow. So there you go then. That was a heck of a performance there, and just seeing that start line melee, that was absolutely heartbreaking. But again, it could have went so many different ways for a lot of the drivers, and thankfully for the most part, a lot of them just getting out with a bruised ego.
Yeah, that was obviously a big moment. It could have changed this championship. It certainly changed the fortunes of some of the drivers and everything as well. I liked how subdued the FDA guys were there. They were very, subdued about the whole thing. It was brilliant. I just want to say personally thank you to everybody here at SRO Esports and everybody, all the partners that we have that make this possible and make it possible for me to be here. And I appreciate that personally. It's been an absolute blast getting to know all of you today. And David, again, hopefully the first of many. It's been an absolute pleasure. And what a way to go out.
Well, I've got to say, like Kevin Siclari in Merrickshant says, we'll be back. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you, Jesse. Thank you so much for joining us today in the commentary booth. As always, a huge thank you to the massive production team behind the scenes who've made this webcast possible. Keep in tune because there are still quite a few SRO Endurance Esports Asia events still to come on the card, so keep in line with that. But a huge thank you as always to our commercial partners at Fanatec, AWS, Pirelli, Kunos Simulazione, AK Esports, SimGrid, SRO Motorsports Group and SRO Esports as well. For myself, it's been an absolute honour seeing out the season here. Thank you very much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. We will see you next season. Take it easy and have a wonderful weekend.